Chapter 3176. Under Manager Jin's repeated persuasion, Steward Sheen still left. After sending Steward Sheen off, Manager Jin did not continue to stay in the auction house. Instead, he quickly rushed to his secret residence. Elder D, Steward Sheen of the Demon Training Tower, came to find me just now. He asked me about the Tears of Cold Flame. From his performance, it is obvious that he urgently needs to use it. I feel that it is necessary to report it to you. At this moment, the smile on Manager Jin's face had already disappeared. There was only seriousness and respect left. At this moment, he was half bowing as he reported the situation to the old man in front of him. Hearing Manager Jin's words, the old man, who was squinting his eyes as if he was about to fall asleep, opened his eyes and said, "Steward Sheen of the Demon Training Tower? It seems that you took back a portion of the Tears of Cold Flame from him last time, right? What does he want the Tears of Cold Flame for now?" If Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun were here, they would be surprised to find that the old man that Manager Jin was treating respectfully was the same old man that they had seen when they received the Novice Spirit Stone on the Emerald Island. He asked for it on behalf of someone else, not because he needs it himself. Oh, the old man's turbid eyes flashed with a hint of light. The lethargy that was originally floating on his body seemed to have dissipated in an instant. There are not many people who can make Steward Sheen personally take action. Have you found out who exactly made him look for the Tears of Cold Flame? Manager Jin shook his head. I tried to ask him, but he was very cautious and was unwilling to reveal any information. However, recently, there's a healing medicine in the Demon Training Tower that has set off a craze in the entire Penglai Island. I think this matter might be related to the doctor who made this healing medicine. During this period of time, other than this healing medicine, the Demon Training Tower had been calm and peaceful. There were no other clues, and this was the only thing he could connect to. Go and find out who is searching for the Tears of Cold Flame, and what is the purpose of searching for the Tears of Cold Flame. After you understand this matter, come and inform me as soon as possible. You must not neglect it. At this moment, a serious expression appeared on the old man's face. It was obvious that this matter had already made him take it very seriously. Seeing the old man's serious appearance, Manager Jin hurriedly nodded. I'll send someone to inquire as soon as I leave. I definitely won't delay. Be careful when you ask around. Don't let others find out. Manager Jin hesitated for a moment and couldn't help but ask, Elder D, may I know who the higher-ups want us to pay attention to, and why exactly are they looking for the Tears of Frostfire? Manager Jin had never been able to understand this point. Ever since he became the manager of the Golden Flame Auction House, he had received this news. He had collected almost all of the Tears of Frigid Flame that had been scattered throughout the Shengxian continent. At the same time, he had also received a message to pay attention to those who were interested in the Tears of Frigid Flame. However, after so many years, he had never seen anyone who was interested in the Tears of Glacial Flame. After waiting for so long, there was finally some news. Even he felt very surprised. Could it be that the higher-ups had spent 20 years looking for this person? Old Emperor glanced at Manager Jin indifferently and said, Don't worry about things you shouldn't care about. Just do your job well. When it's time for you to know, you'll naturally know. Chapter 3177. You may leave. Remember to investigate this information as soon as possible. It must be accurate. Elder D emphasized. Manager Jin nodded repeatedly. Elder D, don't worry. I will be careful with this matter. There will definitely be no mistakes. Hearing Manager Jin's promise, Elder D's expression became a little better. He waved his hand and Manager Jin left the room. After leaving the room, Manager Jin couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief. The cold sweat on his forehead was also wiped away by him. Although Di Lao usually looked sleepy and uninterested in anything, in fact, every time he saw Di Lao, he could feel a strong pressure. This old man's whereabouts were usually erratic, but he would come to the auction house every once in a while. Elder D was also the middleman between him and the higher-ups. Manager Jin originally wanted to ask Elder D if there was a possibility of selling the Tears of Glacial Flame to Manager Qin, but when he thought of the situation just now, he could only swallow all these words back into his stomach. Right now, The most important thing was to inquire about this information. Everything else was not the most important. Elder D's one sentence could determine whether or not he could keep his position. Therefore, he never dared to delay anything Elder D told him to do. After Manager Jean left, Elder D couldn't help but think of the two young people he met on Emerald Island. He clearly remembered that one of the cultivators said that his surname was D. The surname D was very rare in the Shengxian continent. He had stayed here for so many years, but he had never seen a cultivator with the surname D. He just didn't know if the person looking for the tears of glacial flame was also this young man. Thinking of this, Elder D laughed and shook his head. How could there be such a coincidence in this world? If it was really like this, then perhaps there really was a glimmer of hope. However, so many years had passed. The more time passed, the more he felt that this hope was slim. However, he also knew that no matter what, the higher-ups would definitely not give up. He also had to do his best to search and not let go of any chance. After so many years without any movement, there was finally movement. Perhaps there really was a glimmer of hope. After Steward Qin left Penglai Island, he returned to the magic refining pagoda. He did not immediately look for Penglai Palace or the Hundred Flowers Gate. So far, the fewer people who knew about this news, the better. He believed that after throwing out this bait, Manager Jean would definitely be very concerned about this matter. So, it was not hopeless. The more people knew about this matter, the more people would have ideas about Bailey Hongzhuang. He didn't want Bailey Hongzhuang to be seen by too many people. That would be more troublesome. Of course, if Manager Jean really had no way to obtain the Tears of Frosty Flame, he could only ask the other three major forces. After all, it was better than nothing. The moment Steward Qin returned to the Demon Refining Tower, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three received the news. Right now, Sweet Dream had completely become their spy, and as long as there was any movement, she would immediately inform them, giving them quite a bit of help. Otherwise, the four of them would not know about the situation in the Demon Refining Tower if they were in closed-door cultivation. Chapter 3178. This was because the news that Steward Qin brought back would determine whether they would rise to heaven or fall to hell. If Steward Qin really brought back the Tears of Cold Flame, then the problem they were most worried about would be completely solved. On the contrary, this would be the news they were most unwilling to hear. With Steward Qin's influence on the Penglai Island, if he was unable to obtain the Tears of Cold Flame, then they basically had no other way. Not long after Steward Qin returned to the Magic Training Tower, he immediately found Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. He also knew that Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three had probably been waiting for this news. Now that Bailey Hongzhuang's position in his heart was no longer the same as before, he naturally had to inform Bailey Hongzhuang first. "Steward Qin, you're here." Seeing that Steward Qin had personally come, a smile quickly appeared on Bailey Hongzhuang's face. At the same time, a bit of anticipation emerged in her heart. In fact, before Steward Qin came, they had been thinking about this matter and were unable to calm down. Now that Steward Qin had come, they were able to calm down. Steward Qin nodded slightly. Under the invitation of Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun, he walked into the house and said, "Young Master D, I went out this time to help you inquire about the whereabouts of the Tears of Cold Flame. We are truly flattered to have Steward Qin personally inquire about it." Di Beichun said. Steward Qin waved his hand, his expression complicated and helpless. This Tears of Cold Flame is a medicinal ingredient that is very difficult to obtain. I've already tried my best. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun's hearts couldn't help but sink. This was the news they didn't want to hear the most. They didn't expect that in the end, it would be like this. However, Steward Qin's next words made Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun's complexion look a bit better. "I want to see the person in charge of the Golden Flame auction house. They have their own uses for the Tears of Frigid Frost, so they were unwilling to take them out. However, after I discussed it with the person in charge of the Golden Flame auction house, he decided to ask if they could give me a portion of the Tears of Frigid Frost. We haven't gotten any results yet, so I'm afraid we can only wait for news." Steward Qin felt very helpless in his heart. Thinking back, he had promised that this matter wouldn't be difficult at all. He didn't expect that after he personally took action, the result would still be like this. After all, he had previously patted his chest and told Bailey Hongzhuang that there weren't many things he couldn't do on Penglai Island. He didn't expect that he would be stumped by just one condition. He felt very helpless. Bailey Hongzhuang and Deep Beichun looked at each other and sighed in relief. As long as it was not a complete rejection, at least it meant that there was still a glimmer of hope. They did not have to feel despair. "Thank you, Steward Qin." Bailey Hongzhuang smiled slightly. "I don't know what Steward Qin thinks the chances of success are." Steward Qin pondered for a moment, then said, "With my understanding of the person in charge of the Golden Flame auction house, he will definitely do his best to help exchange for it. However, I'm not sure about the attitude of the people above him. Speaking of which, this matter is indeed strange. These tears of frigid frost are not of much use on normal days. I didn't expect all of you to need them so much." Chapter 3179. Until now, Steward Qin still didn't know why Bailey Hongzhuang and the Golden Flame auction house wanted the tears of cold flame for. This was what made him the most speechless. He had a premonition that whether it was Bailey Hongzhuang or the Golden Flame auction house, they both needed the tears of cold flame. That was why he was unwilling to reveal the reason. Hearing Steward Qin's probing words, Bailey Hongzhuang pretended not to hear it. This matter was related to Di Beichun's physique, not to mention that someone was deliberately collecting the tears of cold flame. She always felt that there was some connection between these two matters, but she couldn't be sure what kind of connection it was. Before they were sure whether the connection was good or bad, they could only hide this news. "Then we should wait for news from the Golden Flame auction house," Di Beichun said in a deep voice. Steward Qin nodded. "I believe that it won't take long. As long as there is an answer, the person in charge of the Golden Flame auction house will contact me immediately. You guys should also be patient and wait for a while." He was also a little worried. If Bailey Hongzhuang and the others urgently needed the tears of cold flame, they might go to other forces to discuss this deal. That would be troublesome. "All right," Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. "I'll have to trouble Steward Qin to personally inform me. This is what I should do," Steward Qin said with a smile. After Steward Qin left, when Ziren and Shangguan Yingying walked over from the room next door and couldn't wait to ask about the results. "How is it? Did you get the tears of cold flame?" Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head. "Not yet, and the Golden Flame auction house can't confirm the final answer. We can only continue to wait for news. Steward Qin has already personally made a move, and it's still so difficult. The other party really values the tears of cold flame." Ziren frowned. He thought that this was a done deal, but he didn't expect it to be so complicated. This matter will definitely be very difficult to handle. Steward Qin will personally go, and the benefits he will give will definitely not be small. However, the other party cannot be sure of the final result. This proves that this matter is also very uncertain. Di Beichun spoke slowly with a calm voice. Steward Qin did not bring good news, which made his mood even heavier. He had no more than a year left. If he continued like this, the consequences would be unimaginable. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two naturally understood what Di Beichun meant. However, they had no other choice but to wait for the news. They could only hope that the person in charge of the Golden Flame auction house would be able to convince the other party. After Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two broke through to the 5th level of the Purple Realm, they no longer needed to hide in the room and cultivate. They could now participate in the Demon Refining Tower's arena matches. At the very least, this way, no one would notice the problem of their cultivation. When Ziren had been interested in the arena tournament for a long time. These days, he'd been fighting with demon beasts, and he also wanted to try the taste of fighting with cultivators. Moreover, in order to earn money by betting, they had always been spectators in the arena. Because of this, there were many cultivators who mocked them. Chapter 3180. When Ziren had always prided himself as a genius since he was young. He had never admitted defeat in terms of courage. He never thought that he would be ridiculed to such an extent after coming to the demonic tower. It was easy to imagine how unhappy he was. Previously, he even wanted to directly walk into the arena. Even if his cultivation was not at the 5th level of the Purple Realm, his combat strength was not weak. However, for everyone's safety, he could only swallow his anger. If he put everyone in danger just to vent his anger, that would be the worst. He would be a real coward. I'll go to the arena area today to participate in the competition. I'll also take a look at the differences between the demonic tower and the blood tower. It's said that with every victory, the cultivator's body will increase a bit of murderous aura, increasing their strength during battle, when Xiren said slowly. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes lit up. This should be the same as the blood chi we obtained in the blood tower. It's very strange. Bailey Hongzhuang had always had a deep understanding of the existence of the blood chi field. This kind of chi field could affect the opponent during a fight, and thus increase the combat effectiveness of one side. This in itself was a very strange existence. Thinking about it, only the three Great Abyss would have such a mysterious inheritance. She was also very interested in this murderous aura. When Xiren nodded, I'll go and see what the situation is like in a while. You can also bet on my victory. A smile appeared on the faces of Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two. That's natural. How can we not support you when you participate? In the afternoon, when Xiren directly went to the arena area, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two naturally went to support him. Shangguan Yingying also had plans to participate in the arena. If they wanted to obtain the qualification to cultivate in the cultivation area, they had to reach the 13th level of the arena area. This cultivation area was obviously a good place, so they could not let it go. The way to pass through the arena area was the same as the way to pass through the blood tower. Cultivators needed to obtain 10 consecutive victories to be able to enter the next level. However, even with the same method, it was much more difficult to achieve 10 consecutive victories at his current level of cultivation. When Bailey Hongzhuang's group of 4 arrived at the arena, they immediately attracted the attention of many cultivators. The current Bailey Hongzhuang was no longer the same as before. Every cultivator knew of her great name. Among them, there were even quite a few cultivators who wholeheartedly wanted to ask Bailey Hongzhuang for medicine. However, Bailey Hongzhuang did not agree to it. Di Bei and the others actually came to the arena today. They are really rare guests. That's not necessarily true. When they lived on the second floor, they often came to the arena area to bet and watch the matches. However, ever since this healing medicine started to be sold, they never came again. I wonder what they're doing here today. Could it be that they want to participate in the tournament? It can't be. Isn't Di Bei an alchemist? What's she doing here? Di Bei is an alchemist, but that does not mean that the others are also alchemists. Perhaps they are here to participate in the arena competition. Chapter 3181. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two sat down in the spectator area. When Xiren went to the back to register, since it was his first time participating in a single elimination tournament, he could choose his opponent freely. When the crowd saw that when Xiren wanted to participate in the single elimination tournament, they understood. Many of the people present had mocked Xiren before. Among all the cultivators on the demonic refining tower, the ones who had seen Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 the most were the cultivators on the 11th floor. Back then, they thought that Xiren and the other 3 had only come to the demonic refining tower to broaden their horizons and did not have the guts to participate in such a battle. Therefore, they did not hold back when they mocked them. Who would have thought that Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3's performance would be so unexpected? They were somewhat worried that they would offend them. One ran, 5th level of the Purple Realm, 0 battle record. Su Tian, 5th level of the Purple Realm, 3 wins and 2 losses. Soon, when Xiren had matched his opponent, the odds were also displayed at the back. Immediately, many cultivators went to place their bets. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 2 went to look at the odds. Because when Xiren had never participated in a single elimination tournament before, no one knew how strong he was. Therefore, the odds were 1-to-1. It was completely based on guesses. Obviously, it was not as good as his opponent. Xiren did not care about this. He believed that it would not be long before his chances of winning increased. He was very confident that he would win 10 consecutive victories. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 2 bet on Xiren's victory. They were also very confident in Xiren. Although Xiren had just broken through to the 5th level of the Purple Realm and all the cultivators who came to the demonic refining island were geniuses. These cultivators who relied on their own strength step by step usually did not have a stable foundation like when Zyron. Moreover, when Zyron did indeed grow up in a sect. However, his fighting strength was also raised through battles. Comparing the two of them, Zyron's combat power was not inferior to theirs. On the contrary, he was stronger than them. This was the difference between a true genius of a sect and an unorthodox cultivator. Of course, this was also because when Zyron was not one of those so-called geniuses who lived like a prince and relied on medicinal pills to forcefully raise their cultivation. As Zyron walked up to the ring, everyone's curious eyes fell on him. When Zyron had been in the magic refining tower for quite some time now. In this half a year, he had never made a move. Moreover, in this half a year, his cultivation had always been at the 5th level of the purple realm. Everyone felt that it was a little strange. Could it be that Zyron's battle prowess was simply too weak, so he had to cultivate for such a long time before he dared to participate in the arena tournament? However, after Zyron made his move, everyone was completely stunned. This was because the strength that Zyron had displayed was completely different from what they had guessed. He had completely defeated his opponent in a manner that was as easy as crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood, showing the difference in strength between them. Suddenly, the spectator area erupted with cries of surprise. Everyone felt that they had underestimated Zyron before. They did not expect that this guy's fighting strength would be so strong. Thinking back to their previous ridicule of Zyron, everyone felt a little embarrassed. You can't judge a book by its cover. This was true. Steward Qin had always paid close attention to the actions of Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three. Naturally, he did not miss the news of Zyron participating in the arena tournament. Chapter 3182. According to his understanding, ever since Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three came to the demon refining pagoda, they had been focusing on cultivation. Logically speaking, after half a year, their cultivation should have improved. If it was an ordinary cultivator, not having a breakthrough in half a year was not strange, but they had the existence of a genius alchemist like Bailey Hongzhuang, and the opportunity to improve their cultivation was much greater than other cultivators. It should be impossible for them to have no breakthrough at all. Bailey Hongzhuang was also very frank before. She sold the healing medicine in exchange for the spirit stones they needed for cultivation. It could be seen that they had spent a lot of effort on their cultivation. Faintly, he could tell that Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three must have made a breakthrough in half a year. Otherwise, they would have been able to participate in the arena long ago. Why do they have to wait until now to participate? There must be a reason for this. However, after thinking about it, Steward Qin could not help but dismiss this idea. As soon as Bailey Hongzhuang entered his line of sight, he specially investigated the situation of Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang did not belong to any forces before, but was a cultivator who had just arrived at the Penglai Island from the outside world. If he guessed correctly, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three probably came to the Penglai Island because of the name of the demon refining abyss. One must know that many cultivators initially came with this idea. Since they were cultivators from the outside world, if Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three did not reach the 5th level of the purple realm, it would be impossible for them to pass through that barrier. Then what exactly was the problem? Steward Qin frowned. He always felt that there was something fishy about this matter, but he could not figure out where it was. It was really depressing. After Zyron's first match, everyone's view of when Zyron was completely different from before. Even if it was just a battle, everyone could still see how powerful his combat strength was. Zyron obviously enjoyed this kind of gaze. Seeing those people who used to laugh at him shut their mouths one by one, he felt very happy in his heart. After Shangwan Ying followed won Zyron into the single elimination tournament, she also began to participate in the single elimination tournament. However, she did not have the experience of participating in this kind of competition, so she was more careful than Zyron when choosing her opponent. In fact, Shangwan Ying only had less experience than Zyron, but her fighting strength was not much worse than Zyron's. Originally, she was not used to the bloody battles in the Demonic Towers arena area. However, After watching many matches, she gradually became accustomed to such a battle environment. Although it was bloody, as long as she was careful, she could still preserve her life. As for getting injured, that was not within her consideration at all. Not to mention getting injured in the arena, it was also common for them to get injured when they were cultivating in the oceanic world. Now, they were already used to it. In the following days, when Xiren and Shangwan Yingying continued to participate in the arena tournament, they only hoped to obtain 10 consecutive victories and enter the 12th floor as soon as possible. Chapter 3183. Hong Zhuang. It looks like Yingying and I are basking in your glory. When Xiren had a faint smile on his face, he was certain that the cultivators were being so courteous to them not because of them, but because of Bailey Hong Zhuang. That's right, Hong Zhuang. Let's talk about the opponent I fought yesterday. I've seen him when he was participating in the group arena. He's simply brutal to the extreme. Almost all of his opponents ended up either crippled or dead. I was very worried when I found out that my opponent was him. I never thought that he would actually smile at me after we got into the group arena. It's the first time I've seen him smile. Now that I think about it, I still find it hard to believe. Shangwan Yingying's face was filled with amazement. She felt that it was extremely interesting, causing all of her worries to dissipate. Hearing that, Bailey Hong Zhuang smiled. You don't have to give all the credit to me. Who knows? Maybe it's because they have an affinity with you. Forget it. If I had an affinity with that kind of guy, it would be even scarier. Shangwan Yingying shrunk her neck. She was clearly very fearful of the brawny man from yesterday. I see that you guys have been winning consecutively for the past few rounds. I'm afraid that you guys will be able to achieve 10 consecutive victories in the next 2 days. Bailey Hong Zhuang slowly said. When Xiren nodded, the cultivators on the 11th floor aren't much of a threat to us. It won't be difficult for us to pass through the 11th floor. We'll be able to enter the 12th floor in the next 2 days. Let's go through the levels earlier. Once we reach the 13th floor, we can go to the cultivation area. Cultivating there will increase our speed again. Yingying and I plan to challenge the group arena in the next few days. Hong Zhuang, don't you plan to challenge the group arena as well? When Xiren asked, Bailey Hong Zhuang shook her head and said, You guys go ahead. I'll go in a few days. Hearing this, when Xiren's expression darkened, he knew that Bailey Hong Zhuang was doing this for Di Beichen. The three of them were already qualified to challenge the trial. Only Di Beichen was still at the 4th level of the Purple Realm. Because he couldn't expose himself, he could only continue to cultivate in the oceanic world. Why don't we wait for a while? When Xiren suggested. Bailey Hong Zhuang smiled. It's all right. If you do that, I'm afraid Beichun will feel even more apologetic. Besides, we are a team. If your strength increases, it means that the strength of our entire team will increase as well. This is a good thing. Xiren and Shangwan Yingying looked at each other helplessly. Given the current situation, this was probably the only way. It wasn't that they didn't have a code of brotherhood. In fact, they were also making preparations. If Steward Qin couldn't bring back the Tears of Frosty Flame, then they would have to go out and look for it themselves. Right now, they were very clear that the Tears of Frosty Flame were in the Golden Flame auction house. Therefore, whether it was stealing or robbing, as long as they could change Di Beichen's physique, they were willing to do it. And there was a prerequisite for them to complete all of this. That was, they had to be strong enough to be able to do it. However, the Golden Flame auction house's warehouse must be heavily guarded. This was not a simple matter. Chapter 3184. Hearing Xiren's deep concern for Di Beichen, the curve of Bailey Hong Zhuang's lips couldn't help but soften. Don't worry, Beichen has always been very strong. This kind of thing won't trouble him. Xiren and Shangwan Yingying also showed a smile of agreement. Di Beichen had never been so easily defeated. They were just worried and confused. In fact, as long as one's physique could be changed, a temporary suppression of one's cultivation wouldn't be a big deal. The physique of destiny was the most abnormal physique for cultivation. Its cultivation speed was far from what an ordinary physique could compare to. Misfortune and fortune depended on each other. From another perspective, this kind of thing was a good thing. After Xiren and Shangwan Yingying went to the arena area, Bailey Hong Zhuang's eyes showed a hint of seriousness. Ever since the three of them had all broken through to the 5th level of the Purple Realm, she clearly felt that the pressure on Bei-chun had increased by a lot. After all, the 5th level of the Purple Realm was a threshold for them. There was a big difference between crossing it and not crossing it. Once they crossed the 5th level of the Purple Realm, they didn't have to worry about other cultivator suspicions. However, as long as Bei-chun's cultivation was still at the 4th level of the Purple Realm, they had to be careful not to have conflicts with their opponents. Otherwise, once Bei-chun's true cultivation was revealed, it would be very troublesome. In the past few days, Bei-chun had been training in the world of the sea. He didn't stop at all. Even if Bailey Hongzhuang was a cultivation maniac, she had to admit that Bei-chun's recent cultivation intensity was really high. He almost didn't have any time to cultivate. She could feel the strong unwillingness in Bei-chun's heart, but more than that, he didn't want to give in. He didn't want to give in to his physique. Even if this was a problem that all cultivators of the cursed physique faced, he didn't want to believe that there was no way to break through. Even if his breakthrough speed was much slower than ordinary cultivators, as long as he put in more effort, he should be able to break through. He didn't want to become a burden to the entire team and drag everyone down because of him. Looking at Bei-chun like this, Bailey Hongzhuang felt very distressed, but more than that, she admired him. Her man, no matter what difficulties he encountered, would not choose to give up. They both believed that there was always a way out. As long as they put in enough effort, then it was very likely that they would have a harvest. Master, won't Bei-chun tire himself out if he continues like this? The three beasties gathered around Bailey Hongzhuang. After going through the perverse torture of the demonic beasts in the oceanic world, their endurance had improved a lot. However, they could not bear to stay in the oceanic world all the time. Unfortunately, Bei-chun was going all out. They were really worried that Bei-chun would collapse from exhaustion. Bailey Hongzhuang pursed her lips and said, Bei-chun knows his limits. Even if he wants to desperately raise his cultivation, he won't put his life in danger. Sigh. Xiaohei sighed. I'm speechless about this strange, cursed physique. If only Bei-chun didn't have this kind of physique. If Bei-chun didn't have this kind of physique, then he wouldn't have been able to recognize Master. You idiot. Baisher couldn't help but complain. Chapter 3185. Master, what do you plan to do now? Xiaobai stared at Bailey Hongzhuang. It always felt that its master must have some kind of idea in her heart, which was why she did not go to the ocean world to accompany Bei-chun. Otherwise, this kind of action would not be in line with its master's style. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes flashed with a deep light. The cursed body is indeed a very strange physique. If it can't be changed, it will become more and more difficult for Bei-chun to break through. However, breaking through to the 5th level of the Purple Realm is too important for us right now. We must think of a way to help Bei-chun break through. She believed that whether it was her or Bei-chun, they all had a premonition in their hearts. If Steward Qin could not find the tears of cold flame, they would have to leave the demon refining tower to look for it. If Bei-chun's cultivation did not break through by then their situation would be the same as when they first came to Penglai Island. Therefore, they had to cross this threshold. With Bei-chun's current situation, is there any hope of breaking through? Xiaohei could not help but ask. Bailey Hongzhuang's clear phoenix eyes flashed with a thoughtful light. She said in a deep voice, with Bei-chun's current level of desperation, there might be hope for a breakthrough. However, in order to be able to break through 100%, we still have to think of some external help. As soon as these words were said, the eyes of the three beasts immediately lit up. They did not know what method Bailey Hongzhuang was planning to use to help Bei-chun break through. There are some high-grade pills that can help break through. However, if Bei-chun wants to break through the shackles of the cursed body, I'm afraid that the level of this pill will need to be higher. Bailey Hongzhuang's expression was somewhat complicated. Her current alchemy skills had indeed improved a lot compared to before. However, to refine such a high-grade pill was also a huge test. She was not 100% confident. The most important thing is that the medicinal ingredients needed for this kind of high-grade pill are also very precious. I don't have enough medicinal ingredients on hand. Then let's go ask Sweet Dream. There are quite a lot of resources in the demonic refining tower. It's just that the price is a little expensive, White Lion said. There were many cultivators gathered in the demonic training tower. Every day, there would be new cultivators joining and old cultivators leaving. These cultivators usually had a lot of treasures on them. Many of them were sold to exchange for things they needed. Therefore, the Immo refining tower had collected a lot of things. Although he couldn't find the tears of Frostfire, he should still be able to find the more precious herbs. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. I have the same plan, but the three of you should go to the ocean world to accompany Beichun in his cultivation. It will be more dangerous for him to be alone. Even with so many of them together, they could still encounter danger, let alone Beichun alone. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, the three beasts nodded and entered the Chaos Ring. In their opinion, the current Beichun was even scarier than a demonic beast. When he unleashed his battle prowess, a fourth-level Purple Realm cultivator could only die in front of him. Even if Beichun had not broken through to the fifth level of the Purple Realm, they were certain that Beichun would have no problem facing a fifth-level Purple Realm cultivator. He had almost reached the peak of his cultivation. Chapter 3186. Seeing that the three beasts had gone to the ocean world to accompany Beichun to cultivate, Bailey Hongzhuang was relieved and immediately went to the counter. When Sweet Dream saw Bailey Hongzhuang, a surprised smile appeared on her face. Gongzi, why are you free to come to the counter today? These days, Sweet Dream only saw Shangwan Yingying and Wen Xiren often. Beichun and Bailey Hongzhuang still didn't leave the house, so she rarely saw them. Moreover, Bailey Hongzhuang now had enough spirit stones, and she didn't continue to sell her healing medicine. Usually, it was very difficult for her to see Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled into a faint smile. I want to refine a pill, but I still lack some medicinal ingredients, so I came here to take a look. Hearing this, a look of understanding immediately appeared on Sweet Dream's face. I see. What medicinal ingredients do you need? I'll help you check. Bailey Hongzhuang took out a piece of paper and handed it to Sweet Dream. The medicinal ingredients I need are all here. See if you can gather them. No problem. Sweet Dream nodded and then handed a stack of paper to Bailey Hongzhuang. Gongzi, this is the list of cultivators who have asked you for medicine during this period of time. It states the pills they need and the chips they are willing to pay. I know you're not interested in these, but you could take a look. Maybe there is something you need. They have asked me for a long time. If I don't let you take a look, I can't explain it to them. Sweet Dream's expression was a little helpless. She had already told everyone clearly that Bailey Hongzhuang did not intend to help her find any pills, but there were still many cultivators who did not give up and asked every day. As a woman at the counter, she could not refuse everyone's request. She could only take advantage of Bailey Hongzhuang's free time to let her have a look. Bailey Hongzhuang took the paper, and the smile on her lips widened. Because of me, you have a lot of work to do, right? Sweet Dream shook her head and smiled. This is what I should do. I've been working on the second floor before, but now that I'm in the alchemist's living area, the treatment is much better than before. This kind of thing can't be considered troublesome. Seeing that Sweet Dream seemed to be enjoying herself and didn't seem to be putting up a strong front, Bailey Hongzhuang understood that Sweet Dream was probably very satisfied with her current job. In fact, Sweet Dream had basically become her spokesperson. She was usually responsible for dealing with her related matters. Steward Qin didn't have too many requirements for Sweet Dream. It could be said that she was like a fish in water. Flipping through the paper in her hand, Bailey Hongzhuang casually glanced at it. Most of the items were willing to be exchanged with spirit stones, and the price was also very high. However, she was not interested in these things right now. Suddenly, Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze stopped on one of the lines, because she saw a medicinal herb that she was very interested in. Purple blue flower fruit. I didn't expect that someone would use this to exchange for pills. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes lit up. The purple blue flower fruit was a very precious medicinal herb. Its growth conditions were very harsh, and it was not easy to find one. Chapter 3187. However, Bailey Hongzhuang never thought that the purplish blue flower fruit would appear in front of her. It truly surprised her. As a result, She did not need to settle for second best and could directly refine the heavenly spirit saint pill. However, the pill that the other party needed was not of a low grade either. However, compared to the value of the purplish blue flower fruit, this was a very good deal. Sweet dream, Bailey Hongzhuang called out. You don't need to look for the ingredients on the list I gave you. Sweet dream was stunned and looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in surprise. Huh? Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and handed the paper in her hand to Sweet Dream. I'll take this list. Apart from that, I'll write down some new ingredients. Help me gather them. Hearing that, although Sweet Dream was a little confused, she still nodded with a smile. In the past few days, she had never seen Bailey Hongzhuang take the initiative to accept a list. This item must have caught Bailey Hongzhuang's eye. It seemed that what she did was of some use. Very soon, Bailey Hongzhuang wrote down a new list and handed it to Sweet Dream. Help me see if these ingredients are available. Sweet Dream took the list and immediately began to check. Not long after, Sweet Dream smiled. Master D, the ingredients you need are all available in the warehouse. However, the price is not low. No problem. Help me buy them all. I'll do it immediately. At the same time, I'll also inform this cultivator that you've agreed. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded gently. Then I'll return to my room and wait for your news. Not long after, Sweet Dream returned. Not only did she bring the ingredients that Bailey Hongzhuang needed, but she also brought the purplish blue flower fruit. Master D, after I told that cultivator that you've agreed, he was very happy. He immediately gave me the purplish blue flower fruit and told me to bring it to you. Looking at the round, purplish blue flower fruit in Sweet Dream's hand, Bailey Hongzhuang's clear and bright eyes immediately flashed with a dazzling light. Tell him that I'll refine the pill he needs as soon as possible. All right. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the purple-green fruit in her hand. Her mind was filled with the image of Di Beichen's happy face after his successful breakthrough. To her, being able to see Di Beichen smile was more precious than anything else. However, even she couldn't guarantee that she would succeed in concocting a pill of this level. There was only one purplish-green flower fruit, so she could only try her best. This was their biggest hope at the moment. While Bailey Hongzhuang was busy concocting elixirs and Di Beichen was busy cultivating, the Golden Flame Auction House had also sent some cultivators to the Magic Tower to gather information. Manager Jean was extremely attentive to this matter. This was a matter personally ordered by the old emperor, so he absolutely could not make any mistakes. Thus, he specially sent several cultivators to investigate together. The final conclusion was the closest to the truth. Fortunately, there were many cultivators joining the Magic Tower every day. Even if Manager Qin wanted to prevent spies from joining, he couldn't prevent it. With Bailey Hongzhuang's current influence in the Magic Tower, as long as she asked a little, she would be able to find out the truth. Thus, it didn't take long for Manager Jean to receive the news from many spies. Chapter 3188. The two brothers, Di Bei and Di Chun. Steward Jean raised his eyebrows. According to the information from the spies, this healing medicine was made by Di Bei. He was also certain that Steward Qin must have bought the prescription of the healing medicine from Di Bei. However, even though all the spies in the Demon Training Tower used various methods to inquire about the tears of Frosty Flame, they still did not obtain any results. As a result, he could not be sure who exactly needed the tears of Frosty Flame. As for the reason why they needed the tears of Frosty Flame, he did not know. This kind of result was very different from the person Di Lao had given him. Inquiring about it was basically the same as not inquiring about it. Everything was an uncertain result. Thinking of this, Manager Jean also felt depressed. Di Lao was not as kind as he looked on the surface. If he did not do the task well, once Di Lao lost his temper, he would not be able to bear it. After thinking about it, Manager Jean kept pacing in the room. In the end, he could only brace himself and report to Di Lao first. Inside the room, when Di Lao saw that Manager Jean had come, the sleepiness on his face had completely disappeared. Have you inquired about the news? The spies who inquired about the news have returned, but they are not sure about the result for the time being. Manager Jin's face revealed some helplessness as he slowly said. Hearing this, Di Lao could not help but frown. Not sure for the time being? The spies inquired about the demon training tower for a long time, but they did not find any news about the Tears of Frosty Flame. In my opinion, this should be a secret agreement between the other party and Manager Chin. No one else knows about it, so no news has been spread. So, this is equivalent to no gain? Di Lao's expression was calm, and there was not the slightest bit of joy, anger, sorrow, or joy in his voice, but it made Manager Chin panic for no reason. It's not that there is no gain at all. Manager Chin hurriedly said. Di Lao did not say anything. He only looked at Manager Chin indifferently, waiting to hear the next news. Previously, there was a healing medicine in the demon training tower that was very famous. Recently, Manager Chin earned a lot of money because of this healing medicine. When he came to me this time to ask for the Tears of Frosty Flame, he directly said that the other party needed it to discuss business. Only by obtaining the Tears of Frosty Flame would he be able to continue his business with the other party. I heard that other than the owner of this healing medicine, Steward Chin hasn't had much contact with anyone else recently, so I believe that this business is most likely to be discussed with the owner of this healing medicine. Who is that person? Di Bei. Manager Chin replied. He couldn't help but look at Elder D, hoping that Elder D wouldn't fly into a rage. Hearing the name Di Bei, Di Lao's eyes could not help but flash with a hint of surprise. It was actually another person with the surname Di. He had stayed on Penglai Island for so many years, but he had never heard of this surname before. Why did he encounter another one now? What else is there about Di Bei? This Di Bei went to the Devil Training Tower half a year ago. He had always kept a low profile. It was only when the healing medicine he made became famous that the people in the Devil Training Tower noticed his existence. Chapter 3189. Di Bei. Di Chun. Elder D muttered these two names, feeling that these names were somewhat familiar. Manager Chin sized up Elder D, not daring to interrupt his thoughts at all. Suddenly, Elder D's eyes lit up as he said, Di Bei Di Chun, isn't that Di Bei Chun? Hearing Elder D's words, Manager Chin couldn't help but be puzzled. Di Bei Chun? Who was this person? He had never heard of this person before. I didn't expect it to really be the two of them. What a coincidence. Elder D's eyes flashed with a bright light, his heart filled with interest. Thinking back to the first time he heard Di Bei Chun say that his surname was Di, he already felt that it was very special. He didn't expect that they would need the Tears of Frosty Flame now. If all these things were coincidence, then it would be too much of a coincidence. It's just that, Elder D muttered, his expression becoming complicated again. If it was really as he thought, then with Di Bei Chun's current cultivation, he shouldn't be in such a good condition. Once the cursed physique flared up, its influence would be extremely terrifying. Not to mention reaching the 5th level of the Purple Realm. Before reaching the 5th level of the Purple Realm, his cultivation would already be stagnant. Moreover, his body would gradually stiffen. Unless he could change his physique, only death would await him in the end. If all of this was true, how did Di Bei Chun do it? Elder D couldn't understand. This situation was really a bit complicated, but he was really interested in this Di Bei Chun. No matter what, he had to understand clearly. No matter how slim the hope was, he had to confirm it. As long as there was a glimmer of hope, they wouldn't give up. Manager Chin looked at Elder D's sometimes happy and sometimes sad appearance from the side, his mouth muttering some words that he couldn't understand at all. He was also puzzled. This was the first time he had heard the names Di Bei and Di Chun. Why did Elder D seem to have heard of them before? Could it be that Elder D knew them? After all, whether it was Elder D, Di Bei, or Di Chun, they all had the same surname. Elder D, what do you plan to do next? Manager Chin couldn't help but ask. Should I send another wave of spies to find out more? Old Emperor waved his hand. Since this wave of spies didn't get any results, even if you send another wave, it will be useless. If Steward Chin finds out, this matter will be even more troublesome. What do you mean? Prepare an auction and auction off a portion of the Tears of Cold Flame. Elder D's eyes flashed with wisdom as he slowly spoke. Hearing this, Manager Chin couldn't help but be taken aback. Take the Tears of Glacial Flame out to auction? Elder D nodded, luring the snake out of its hole. If Di Bei and the others really need the tears of Frosty Flame, then once the news of this auction spreads, they will definitely come personally to participate. However, if I do this, Steward Sheen will definitely think that I want to bypass him and directly contact the other party. I think he will hate me because of this. Chapter 3190. Hearing Steward Jin's words, Elder D's expression did not change in the slightest. No matter what Steward Sheen thinks, you only need to do as I say. You and Steward Sheen only have a relationship of interest. Even if you don't get along because of this matter, the next time you have a common interest, it can be restored. With your methods, it shouldn't be a problem to deal with these matters. Elder D's deep voice was filled with indifference and coldness. He looked at Steward Jean indifferently, without the slightest hint of emotion. Hearing this, Steward Jean nodded and said, I understand. I'll do it immediately. Go. Elder D waved his hand, and Steward Jean left the room. After Steward Jean left, Elder D did not continue to stay in the room and disappeared with a sweep of his body. He felt that he had to report this news. After so many years, they had not been able to find any news. Now that a somewhat similar kid had finally appeared, they had to focus on investigating. Magic Tower, Alchemist's residential area. As a strong medicinal fragrance spread out, Bailey Hongzhuang's elegant and refined face could not help but reveal a thick smile. At this moment, her forehead was still dripping with sweat, but her smile was exceptionally brilliant. I finally succeeded in refining it. Bailey Hongzhuang breathed a sigh of relief, her whole body retreating from her tense state. Because there was only one purplish-green flower fruit, she only had one chance to refine it. Therefore, when she was refining this time, she was very careful and did not dare to be distracted in the slightest. It was not easy for her to refine a pill of this level. She had only refined one pill, but she only felt that the mental power in her mind was almost exhausted. Her entire body was abnormally tired, but her heart was unusually happy. Next to Bailey Hongzhuang were two white porcelain bottles. One of them contained the pill she had promised to refine for the cultivator, and the other contained the Heavenly Spirit Saint pill she had prepared for Di Beichen. Looking at these two pills, Bailey Hongzhuang's heart was also very satisfied. Baisher moved closer to Bailey Hongzhuang, his eyes full of joy. Congratulations, Master. You've finally refined it successfully. Yes. Bailey Hongzhuang patted Baisher's head. Beichen has been cultivating so hard recently, and his cultivation has also improved. It's just that he's still unable to break through this bottleneck. I believe that with this Heavenly Spirit Saint elixir, he should be able to successfully break through. White Lion nodded. Xiao He and Xiao Bai are hoping that Master can quickly refine the pills. They've been accompanying Di Beichen in his cultivation every day and are about to die of exhaustion. At this point, Baisher could not help but gloat. Di Beichen cultivated without any regard for his life, but Xiao He and Xiao Bai were truly lazy. As such, they would suffer under Di Beichen. They had only stayed in the ocean world for over 10 days, but Xiao He and Xiao Bai seemed to have lost a lot of weight. Hearing Baisher's words, Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but chuckle. It seems I'll have to prepare some delicious food to reward them today. Bailey Hongzhuang packed up the things in the house and changed her appearance again. She then went to the counter and handed the pills to Sweet Dream. After that, she ordered some sumptuous food before returning to the house. Chapter 3191. Di Beichen's chiseled face was now even more angular, and his deep and enchanting eyes were now filled with hostility and sharpness. After such a long period of fighting with demonic beasts, Di Beichen had unknowingly been tainted with a bit of murderous aura. If an ordinary person was swept by Di Beichen's fierce gaze, they would probably be scared out of their wits. Beichen, you've been working too hard recently. You should take a rest. Looking at Di Beichen like this, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but feel a burst of heartache. If it weren't for his physique, Di Beichen wouldn't have fallen to such a state. The moment he looked at Bailey Hongzhuang, the hostility on Di Beichen's face completely dissipated and was replaced by his usual deep affection and gentleness. Wife, you don't have to worry about me. I know what I'm doing, Di Beichen said softly. Bailey Hongzhuang walked to Di Beichen's side, and her 5 fingers covered Di Beichen's haggard face. You're working so hard. My heart aches when I see you working so hard. Di Beichen grabbed Bailey Hongzhuang's soft and boneless hand and placed it on his face. The curve of his lips gradually widened. I'm a man. What's the big deal about working hard? You don't have to feel sorry for me. It's you who's always worried about me. I'm the one who feels the most sorry. Bailey Hongzhuang leaned into Di Beichen's arms, her charming face full of gentleness. To me, nothing is more important than you. You must not give yourself too much pressure. Di Beichen nodded. I've always listened to what my wife says. I just ordered a lot of food. Let's have a good rest today. Bailey Hongzhuang sat up straight and stared at Di Beichen. Hearing this, Di Beichen's eyes flashed with hesitation. Clearly, he still wanted to continue cultivating. However, when he saw Bailey Hongzhuang's sparkling eyes and the anticipation on her face, he immediately nodded and said, Okay. Xiao He and Xiao Bai only felt that Di Beichen's okay was simply the sound of nature. They had been so tired these days that they were about to collapse. Today, they finally had a chance to rest. Great, Di Beichen is finally going to rest. Xiao He slumped onto the table with a thud. Clearly, she was so exhausted that she did not even have the strength to get up. Xiao Bai's situation was not much better than Xiao He's. It immediately crawled to Xiao He's side and lay down with a thud. Right now, it only wanted to sleep until the end of time. However, when Bailey Hongzhuang placed the dishes on the table, Xiao He and Xiao Bai immediately turned over when they smelled the rich aroma. When they saw the delicious dishes, the two of them quivered and immediately got up. Their eyes were filled with excitement. Master is still the best to us. She knows that we've been working too hard these days, so she prepared so much good food for us. Xiao He said excitedly. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. These two fellows usually like to complain about the things they did. However, as long as a table of good food was prepared for them, they would immediately be willing to do anything. Hurry up and eat. You've lost a lot of weight recently. Quickly take this opportunity to make up for it. Bailey Hongzhuang glanced at Xiao He and Xiao Bai. Then, she picked up her chopsticks and picked up some food for Di Beichen. She said, Beichen, you should eat more too. Di Beichen smiled faintly. My wife should eat more. I see that you also look very tired. Did something happen these 2 days? Chapter 3192. After dinner, Bailey Hongzhuang handed the white porcelain bottle to Di Beichen. Looking at the white porcelain bottle in his hand, a hint of surprise appeared in Di Beichen's eyes. He asked, Wife, what is this? This is the holy pill of heavenly spirit. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. You've been cultivating so hard recently, and your strength has already improved a lot. It's just that you haven't been able to break through the bottleneck because of the restrictions of the cursed body. With the holy pill of heavenly spirit, you should be able to successfully break through. Following Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Di Beichen couldn't help but be stunned. Then, a look of pleasant surprise flashed across his face. You mean that the holy pill of heavenly spirit can help me break through? Even though Di Beichen had been acting very indifferent towards his cultivation recently, he had always yearned to break through in his heart. This was because the feeling of dragging down the team was really uncomfortable. At this moment, hearing Bailey Hongzhuang say that he still had a chance to break through, Di Beichen was unable to hide his emotions for a moment. He directly revealed his excitement and surprise. The smile in Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes gradually deepened. She nodded. Yes, the holy pill of heavenly spirit has the effect of helping cultivators break through. However, you must rest well and recover your condition to its peak before consuming it. Only then will you be able to increase the possibility of breaking through. Hearing the deep concern in Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Di Beichen's heart also warmed. He reached out and pulled Bailey Hongzhuang into his embrace. Wife, I see that you're so tired today. It should be because you're helping me refine the holy pill of heavenly spirit. At this moment, if Di Beichen still didn't understand all of this, he would be too stupid. Compared to you, what is this little bit of hard work of mine? Di Beichen's efforts had already reached an astonishing level. She had only used up her mental strength to refine the pill. As long as she slept, her mental strength would quickly recover. Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang like this, Di Beichen lowered his head and directly kissed Bailey Hongzhuang's lips. Originally, he only wanted to taste it briefly, but after feeling the tempting sweetness, Di Beichen could no longer control his desire. His hands began to grope Bailey Hongzhuang's body unruly. A blush quickly appeared on Bailey Hongzhuang's face. "Beichen, don't you want to rest? Your husband doesn't mind being a little more tired before go to have a good rest." Di Beichen's lips curled into a devilish smile as he chuckled. In the next 2 days, Di Beichen rested and cultivated in his room. After so many days of fighting and killing, his mental strength was not small. In order to maximize the effects of the holy pill of heavenly spirit, he had to rest well and adjust himself to his best state. Only when Di Beichen had recovered to his peak state did he try to break through. Because this process could not be disturbed by anyone, Di Beichen directly chose to break through in the chaos ring. That was the safest place where no one would disturb him. When Ziren and Shangwan Yingying knew that Bailey Hongzhuang had refined a pill that could help Di Beichen break through, they were also overjoyed. When Di Beichen tried to break through, they did not go to the arena area. Instead, they stayed in the room and waited for news from Di Beichen. Chapter 3193. When Di Beichen was about to break through in the chaos ring, Steward Qin heard an extremely bad news. "What did you say?" "The Golden Flame auction house took out the Tears of Frosty Flame for auction?" Steward Qin looked at his subordinate in front of him, his voice full of shock and disbelief. "Steward Qin, this is the catalog of items being auctioned by the Golden Flame auction house this time. Take a look." Steward Qin took the catalog and quickly noticed that the Tears of Frosty Flame were clearly written on it. His gaze gradually darkened, and his expression was very ugly. Ever since he returned, he had been waiting for news from Steward Qin. There had been no movement for so long, and he had some doubts in his heart. He only felt that something might have happened. Steward Qin must have felt that it was not easy to explain to him, so he had not sent any news. However, he never thought that Manager Qin would actually do this to him. This move of removing the firewood from under the cauldron was really too despicable. This damned Steward Qin is getting more and more slippery. I have already agreed to share a portion of his benefits, but he still wants to go over me and directly obtain the benefits. This is really a good plan. Steward Qin's face was ashen. Steward Jin's move had really caught him off guard. Even though he had known Steward Qin for many years and knew that Steward Qin had always been a shrewd businessman, such a move was really beyond his expectations. Could it be that his previous performance had made Steward Qin feel that the benefits were too great, so he was prepared to throw everything aside and try? Steward Qin kept thinking about the real reason in his mind, but no matter what, this time, the grudge between him and Steward Qin could be considered to have been formed. Steward Qin wants to go over me to discuss with Di Bei and the others. I will definitely not let him do as he wishes. Steward Qin's eyes flashed with a sinister and firm light. He had never done such a loss-making business. Since Steward Qin had made such a move, then he would not be polite. When Sweet Dream saw that the Tears of Frosty Flame were actually on the auction catalog of the Golden Flame auction house, her face quickly filled with surprise. She looked again, and after confirming that she was not mistaken, she quickly left the counter. In the past 6 months, she had been helping Bailey Hongzhuang pay attention to the news of the Golden Flame auction house. However, she had never seen any trace of the Tears of Glacial Flame. Now that she had finally seen it, how could she not be excited? As soon as Bailey Hongzhuang opened the door, she saw the excited Sweet Dream, and her clear eyes quietly leaped with a touch of surprise. "Sweet Dream, did something good happen? Why are you so happy?" Sweet Dream smiled and nodded. She extended her hand and handed the auction booklet to Bailey Hongzhuang. "Young Master D, there's news about the Tears of Frosty Flame. The Tears of Frosty Flame will be sold at the Golden Flame auction house's auction next month." Hearing Sweet Dream's words, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but be startled. She immediately looked at the picture book. "Is this true?" After hearing the news, when Xiren and Shangwan Yingying couldn't hold back their excitement. They directly went to Bailey Hongzhuang's side and glanced at the auction catalog. Looking at the name and picture of the Tears of Frosty Flame clearly written on the auction catalog, Bailey Hongzhuang felt a burst of excitement in her heart. It's really the Tears of Frosty Flame. Chapter 3194. Sweet Dream looked at the unconcealable excitement on the faces of Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two, and the smile on her face couldn't help but deepen. She felt an indescribable satisfaction in her heart when she saw them so happy. Sweet Dream, thank you. This news is really important to us. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Sweet Dream gratefully. This was really great news. If it weren't for Sweet Dream helping them pay attention to the situation at the Golden Flame auction house, they might have missed it. Feeling Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze, Sweet Dream smiled. As long as I can help you guys, I'm very happy. Are you guys going to participate in this auction? Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two looked at each other and nodded. It's rare to see the Tears of Frigid Flame. We naturally won't give up this opportunity. Then I wish you guys good luck and successfully bid for the Tears of Frigid Flame. Sweet Dream smiled. I hope so. After Sweet Dream left, the excitement in the hearts of Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two gradually calmed down and was replaced by a trace of doubt. Steward Qin specially went to the Golden Flame auction house to talk about the Tears of Frigid Flame. However, the person in charge of the Golden Flame auction house couldn't make up his mind. Why'd he take out the Tears of Frigid Flame to auction now? I'm afraid there's something fishy about this. Xiren's eyes rippled with a thoughtful light, and his voice quietly lowered. Shangwan Yingying nodded. Isn't the Golden Flame auction house's actions the same as slapping Steward Qin's face? Indeed. At this moment, Bailey Hongzhuang was also confused. Logically speaking, with Steward Qin's status and influence on Penglai Island, the Golden Flame auction house shouldn't easily offend him. This kind of action is really strange. According to her understanding, this Golden Flame auction house had always been an old hand, wandering between various powers, and had never offended any party. However, this time, the act of taking out the Tears of Cold Flame for auction had undoubtedly offended Steward Qin to death. Then what should we do? Shangwan Yingying frowned. Could it be a trap? Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and when Xiren's expressions turned complicated. Even if there really is a trap, we still have to go to this auction. However, it won't be that easy for them to catch us. That's right. We're definitely going there. Perhaps we'll be able to find out what the Golden Flame auction house is planning. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes darkened. Counter soldiers with arms, water with an earth weir. No matter what the other party was waiting for them, they would deal with it accordingly. As long as they could obtain the Tears of Frigid Fire, they would not hesitate to pay any price. Overall, this is still very good news. When Xiren saw that everyone's expression was so heavy, he could not help but dispel the atmosphere. Beichun is currently in the process of breaking through. As long as he succeeds in breaking through, our safety when we head to Penglai Island will increase. If we successfully obtain the Tears of Frigid Fire, then our ultimate goal of coming to Penglai Island will have been achieved. This can't be any better. Bailey Hongzhuang and Shangwan Yingying smiled and nodded. However, the heaviness in their hearts still did not dissipate. They had a faint feeling that the other party had intentionally taken out the Tears of Frosty Flame to lure them out of their lair. Chapter 3195. After confirming this point, Bailey Hongzhuang continued to flip through the auction catalog in her hand. She had to admit that the Golden Flame auction house was indeed worthy of being the largest auction house on Penglai Island. Almost none of the treasures on sale were simple. They were all precious treasures. In comparison, the Tears of Glacial Flame could only be considered ordinary among the many treasures. It was not eye-catching at all. Even so, Bailey Hongzhuang still had a premonition in her heart that all these precious treasures were actually just accessories for the Tears of Glacial Flame. The main purpose of the Golden Flame auction house's auction was to obtain the Tears of Glacial Flame. This was a judgment without any reason, but this was Bailey Hongzhuang's intuition. It was abnormally accurate. Suddenly, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes focused on one of the items in the auction catalog, and her heart was filled with surprise. Incomplete map? There was clearly an item called the incomplete map on the auction catalog. Looking at the rough image of the incomplete map, Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but think of the two incomplete maps that she and Di Beichun had obtained previously. Previously, they did not know where the two incomplete maps were drawn because they did not find any other incomplete maps. They had only been collecting these two incomplete maps. She did not expect to see a third incomplete map in this auction on Penglai Island. Compared to the process of her and Di Beichun obtaining the incomplete map in the past, the fact that the third incomplete map could appear in an auction of this level showed that this incomplete map was not an ordinary item. Master, is this the same incomplete map as the one we found previously? At this moment, Xiao He tilted her head and looked at the catalog in Bailey Hongzhuang's hands. After seeing the incomplete map, she could not help but feel excited. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. If I'm not wrong, it should be the same. I didn't expect to see it here. Then this time we have to bid for this incomplete map as well. I think this might really be a treasure map. Xiao He's eyes flashed with excitement. This incomplete map was so mysterious. Perhaps there was a huge secret behind it. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled up slightly. She felt that their fate with this map fragment was not shallow. The entire Shengxian continent was so big, and there were only 4 pieces of the map, which were scattered all over the place. Now that they had seen a third piece, they might be able to gather all 4 pieces of the map and find out the secret behind it. Di Beichun had taken longer to break through than Bailey Hongzhuang and the others had expected. According to their judgment, Di Beichun should have broken through by now. However, Di Beichun had yet to emerge from the chaos ring. In this regard, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others could not help but feel worried. He had not come out for so long. Could it be that he had failed to break through? Perhaps Di Beichun felt that he couldn't face them, so he stayed in the chaos ring and didn't come out. When they thought of this possibility, everyone's hearts could not help but sink. This result did not matter to them. They were only worried that Di Beichun, who had been suppressing himself all this time, would not be able to take such a blow. Fortunately, after a while, Di Beichun finally emerged from the chaos ring. Beichun, when they saw Di Beichun emerge, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others could not help but call out at the same time. However, none of them asked about the final result. Chapter 3196. Looking at Di Beichun's relaxed expression, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 2 quickly smiled tacitly. It seems that, Beichun, you have successfully broken through. When Serene said slowly. Di Beichun nodded. Of course. Do you think I can't break through? Good boy. The smile on Serene's face became brighter. Then why did you take so long to come out? You made us worried. The suppression of this cursed body is very strong, so breaking through is not as easy as before. Fortunately, the medicinal power of the heavenly spirit Saint Pill is strong enough, but this breakthrough still took a long time. Hearing Di Beichun's words, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 2 immediately understood. Although he said it very simply, the process of breaking through is very dangerous. If they were not careful, they might fail. After all, they were forcefully fighting against the cursed body. It was against the heavens, so it was naturally not that easy. No matter what, you have successfully broken through. Congratulations. Shangguan Yingying smiled tenderly. Di Beichun's face was filled with a faint smile. Ever since the suppression of the cursed body became stronger and stronger, they had not seen Di Beichun smile like this for a long time. They could not help but feel happy for Di Beichun. Beichun, we have another piece of good news for you. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Di Beichun with a smile. She felt that compared to the gloominess from before, there was a light at the end of the tunnel. Good news came one after another. What good news? Bailey Hongzhuang handed the auction booklet to Di Beichun. The Golden Flame Auction House will be auctioning the Tears of Frosty Flame next month. As soon as these words came out, Di Beichun could not help but be stunned, and a look of surprise flashed across his face. Didn't Steward Qin say that the Golden Flame Auction House attaches great importance to the Tears of Frosty Flame? Why would they auction it now? I don't know. I'm afraid there's something wrong with this. But no matter what, As long as the tears of frigid fire appear, it's a good opportunity for us. Zyron said. Bachan's face was slightly dusty. There was a hint of surprise between his eyebrows, but more of it was solemn. I'm afraid Steward Sheen already knows about this news. I wonder what Steward Sheen's attitude is. Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head. This news was just told to us by Sweet Dream. I think Steward Sheen should have just found out as well. He hasn't come to us yet, and we don't know his attitude. However, according to my estimation, he should come to us soon. Steward Sheen was not a stupid person. He naturally knew that this news could not be hidden from them, so he would definitely come and talk to them in detail. They were not clear about the clues, but presumably Steward Sheen would know more about the situation than them. No matter what, this is good news. I think we have to be prepared. If we can get it, that would be the best. If we can't, then I'm afraid we have to snatch it. Zyron's face was filled with a warm smile. He was clearly talking about robbery, but his face was still like a spring breeze. It was really incongruous. Xiao He and Xiao Bai immediately stood up. If it's about stealing, we also have a certain ability. Suddenly, the 4 people and 3 beasts in the room couldn't help but laugh. This was the best news they had received since coming to Penglai Island. Chapter 3197. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang had expected, not long after they found out that the Tears of Frigid Flame was about to be auctioned, Steward Sheen came to find them. As soon as he entered the room, Steward Sheen noticed the auction booklet on the table and understood that Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 already knew about this news. Steward Sheen. Bailey Hongzhuang invited Steward Sheen into the room and placed a cup of tea in front of him. Young Master D, you should already know that the Tears of Frigid Flame is about to be auctioned, right? Steward Sheen went straight to the point. At this point, there was no need to hide it anymore. It was better to be honest. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. That's right, we already know. I've been waiting for news from Golden Flame Auction House's Steward Sheen. I didn't expect him to actually take out the Tears of Frigid Flame for auction. This is truly beyond my expectations. Steward Sheen sighed, the anger on his face still not dissipating. This guy is too despicable. Seeing Steward Sheen like this, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun couldn't help but look at each other. They secretly thought to themselves, could it be that this was a game between the Golden Flame Auction House and the Demon Refining Tower? Or could it be that the Golden Flame Auction House's method was aimed at Steward Sheen and had nothing to do with them? If that was the case, then it would be good news for them. Steward Sheen, do you know why the Golden Flame Auction House suddenly decided to auction the Tears of Frigid Flame? Di Beichun asked. This was what they couldn't understand the most. I'm not sure about this either. Steward Sheen thought for a while and slowly said, according to my judgment, he should know that I have a deal with you and wants to bypass me and directly contact you in order to obtain the greatest benefits. The reason why they held this auction is probably to lure you out. As soon as these words came out, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun couldn't help but be stunned. They had never understood where this problem came from before. Now that they heard Steward Sheen's answer, the things that they couldn't figure out seemed to be connected in an instant. Steward Sheen couldn't help but look at the expressions of Bailey Hongzhuang. He didn't want the profit method he had painstakingly thought of to be intercepted like this. That manager Gene is also not a good person. He is a cunning old fox. You guys don't understand him well enough. Steward Sheen continued. In my opinion, when the auction starts, we should split into 2 groups and let me bid for the Tears of Cold Flame. As long as I appear, I believe that the other forces will give me some face and not compete with me. Otherwise, in such a large auction, no matter what it is very likely that it will be sold at a sky-high price. Steward Sheen, in that case, the Golden Flame Auction House is willing to take out a portion of the Tears of Frigid Flame? Bailey Hongzhuang said slowly. Steward Sheen's expression changed a little and said, that's not necessarily the case. Maybe they are just using this method to lure the snake out of its hole, and in the end, their own people will buy the auction item back. The Golden Flame Auction House has done a lot of this kind of thing, and as for the real situation, we can only judge it after we participate in the auction. Chapter 3198. Steward Sheen was also angry now. Steward Gene actually dared to target him. If Steward Gene succeeded, then where would he put his face in the future? Compared to the benefits he would earn, Steward Gene cared more about his own face. Even if he couldn't get it, he would definitely not let Steward Gene's plan succeed. Otherwise, if word got out in the future, he would become a joke on Punlai Island. Thinking of this, Steward Gene could only hope that Steward Jin's actions this time were all for naught. Hearing Steward Gene's words, Bailey Hongzhuang and Deep Beichun also understood that Steward Gene was going against the Golden Flame auction house. He would rather not get anything than let the Golden Flame auction house get any benefits. It had to be said that this was extremely good news for them, because this way they would be able to maximize their own benefits. Young Master D, why don't we do this for the time being? Steward Gene thought for a while and said, let's split up and go to the auction. Be careful not to be discovered by others. If I can get the Tears of Frosty Flame, we can talk about this cooperation later. If I can't get the Tears of Frosty Flame, then I'm willing to pay a sufficient price, as long as you don't cooperate with the Golden Flame auction house. No matter what kind of chips you have, you can negotiate with the Golden Flame auction house first, and then talk to me. I believe that this won't do you any harm. This matter concerns the face of my demon training tower and the competition between us and the Golden Flame auction house. No benefits can compare to it. Seeing that we have been friends for such a long time, I hope that you can agree to give me a chance at least. Steward Gene's face was filled with seriousness and determination. The Golden Flame auction house had gone overboard in this matter. He was already prepared to shed all pretense of cordiality with them. Di Beichun muttered to himself for a moment, then said, Steward Gene, we already understand what you mean. Don't worry, we will give you an explanation. Hearing Di Beichun's words, Steward Gene's gloomy face became a little better. Thank you. After discussing all of this, Steward Gene left. His footsteps were very fast, and it was obvious that he was thinking about how to return this matter to the Golden Flame auction house. We've been dealing with Steward Gene for so long, but this is the first time we've seen him being so open and honest. It seems that he and the Golden Flame auction house are really going against each other this time. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. Di Beichun nodded slightly. At their level, although they value benefits very much, the most important thing is still face. Golden Flame auction house's actions are tantamount to slapping Steward Gene's face. It's normal for Steward Gene to be so angry. Regardless of whether or not we will cooperate with Steward Gene in the end, at least we will have to pay a lot less. According to this situation, Manager Gene of the Golden Flame auction house is indeed a sly old fox. If we want to deal with him, I'm afraid we have to be more careful. Bailey Hongzhuang pondered and said, even a person like Steward Gene had been tricked by Steward Gene. Compared to Steward Gene, they did not have the backing of the magic refining pagoda. Chapter 3199. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. Negotiating with an old fox like Manager Gene must be done step by step. Although Manager Gene was also a profiteer, at least they had a better understanding of this profiteer. What's more, Manager Gene was obviously angry now and was willing to pay more benefits. If possible, she would still be more willing to cooperate with Manager Gene. After all, they still had to return to the demon refining pagoda in the future. Now that they hadn't even gone through the arena, there was no need to talk about the inheritance of the murderous aura. The auction held by the Golden Flame auction house this time was very vast. Every island in the Punlai Island had received the auction catalog of the Golden Flame auction house. When the time came, interested people would go to take a look. The specific time was set for the 18th of next month, so Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three were not in a hurry to set off. They just had to wait until the time was about right. Xiren and Shangwan Yingying were now on the 13th floor of the arena. However, the cultivators on the 13th floor were no longer at the 5th level of the Purple Realm. It was already very difficult for when Xiren and Shangwan Yingying to reach the 13th floor. In the entire 13th floor, only the two of them were at the 5th level of the Purple Realm. The other cultivators were all at the 6th level of the Purple Realm and above. Similarly, their advantage was also weakened here. There were wins and losses in the battle. If they wanted to achieve 10 consecutive victories, they would need to improve a little. After Di Baiqian broke through the 5th level of the Purple Realm, he also went to the arena with Bailey Hongzhuang. With their current cultivation, although they couldn't reach the higher levels, at least reaching the 13th floor wasn't a problem. At that time, they could go to the cultivation area to cultivate, which would also help them improve their cultivation. As Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baiqian began to break through the arena, the cultivators on the 11th floor were completely shocked. They had never seen Bailey Hongzhuang make a move before. When Bailey Hongzhuang stood on the stage, they were extremely surprised. But when Bailey Hongzhuang burst out with her fighting strength, they were not surprised but shocked. Almost everyone believed that Bailey Hongzhuang's main identity was an alchemist. Although Bailey Hongzhuang had always said that she wanted to cultivate when she refused everyone's request for medicine, everyone had always treated this as a pretense to refuse, and no one believed her at all. However, after Bailey Hongzhuang made her move, they finally believed that this was not a pretense. Bailey Hongzhuang was really cultivating. This kind of fighting strength was not inferior to that of Xiren and Shangwan Yingying, who had surprised everyone before. The moment they made their move, they won easily and did not give their opponents any chance to counterattack. Only then did the crowd realize that Bailey Hongzhuang was a real violent alchemist. Her fighting strength was not inferior to her performance in alchemy at all. However, what surprised the crowd even more was Di Baiqian, because Di Baiqian's move was truly violent. It was clearly Di Baiqian's first time participating in the arena, but the murderous aura emitted from his body was even denser than that of cultivators who had fought several times. Just a glance was enough to make people shudder. Before he even made his move, his aura had already suppressed his opponent, causing his opponent to lose all confidence. This kind of feeling was completely an overwhelming victory. Chapter 3200. After seeing Di Baiqian's performance in the arena, the three beasts couldn't help but shrink their necks. Master, Di Baiqian is like a scourge now. His aura is really too terrifying. He's been fighting alone in a horde of monsters for so long. It's natural for him to develop this kind of aura. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled slightly. Looking at the invincible figure in the arena, her eyes were filled with pride and joy. This was her Baiqian. Baiqian had always been an extremely outstanding existence. If it wasn't for the suppression of the cursed body, he would definitely be the strongest among the four of them. She couldn't help but look forward to seeing how Di Baiqian would change after they obtained the Tears of Glacial Flame. Presumably, that would be how high-spirited Di Baiqian would be. That's true. The three beasts nodded. They still remembered that when they found Di Baiqian in the ocean world, they were completely blinded by bloodlust. Even they couldn't help but be shocked when they saw him. In fact, after fighting monsters for a long time, cultivators would also turn into human-shaped beasts. Although Di Baiqian didn't seem to have changed much, whether it was his combat strength, endurance, or aura, they were all greatly improved compared to before. A cultivator's combat strength wasn't only determined by their own cultivation base, but also by other factors. Previously, even though Xiren had broken through to the 5th level of the Purple Realm, Di Baiqian was still stuck at the 4th level of the Purple Realm. Xiren also didn't dare to guarantee that he could defeat Di Baiqian. This was the real reason. 10 consecutive victories on the 11th floor wasn't a problem for Bailey Hongzhuang or Di Baiqian. In just 2 short days, the two of them had already advanced to the 2nd floor. This news undoubtedly shocked all the cultivators on the 11th floor. Only then did they realize that Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baiqian weren't simple characters. After completing 10 consecutive victories, Bailey Hongzhuang discovered that the murderous aura in her body was much stronger than before. Every time she won a battle, the murderous aura accumulated in her opponent's body would enter her body. This kind of murderous aura was different from blood aura. The effect of blood aura was to make the opponent feel fear, thus suppressing the opponent's strength. On the other hand, murderous aura was used to increase one's own aura. The stronger the murderous aura, the more the opponent would be afraid before they attacked. Once the murderous aura condensed into a substance, it could even kill people without leaving a trace. This was the most frightening thing. Even though the murderous aura in her body wasn't very strong, Bailey Hongzhuang could still feel the effects of the battle. This kind of invisible murderous aura could increase one's self-confidence. It was as if everything in front of one's eyes was nothing. This kind of courageous feeling made one feel very happy. Just a little bit of murderous aura can have such an effect. If I can obtain the inheritance of the murderous aura, I really don't know how much help it will be. Bailey Hongzhuang's ink-black phoenix eyes flashed with a bright light. Her heart was filled with anticipation. The demonic abyss was indeed a mysterious existence. Di Baichen nodded. The effect of the murderous aura on him was particularly obvious. Participating in more battles is also very beneficial to us. If we can obtain more murderous aura, our battle strength will increase a bit when we go to Penglai Island. Chapter 32:01. There was a limit to the murderous aura in the demonic tower. If a cultivator left the demonic tower for too long, the murderous aura in their body would gradually dissipate until there was nothing left. Only after obtaining the inheritance of the demonic tower would the murderous aura continue to exist in their bodies. Just like the blood aura field, it was such an existence. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichen's speed was very fast. Not long after, the two of them had successfully reached the 13th floor, reaching the same level as when Ziren and Shang Waningying. After entering the 13th floor, they realized that it wasn't easy to obtain a 10-win streak here. Thus, they didn't waste any more time here and headed straight to the cultivation area. After knowing the price of a day's cultivation in the cultivation area, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three could not help but sigh. This was really a sky-high price. 100 spirit stones a day, this price was simply too high. However, after understanding the density of the cultivation area, although the four of them could not bear the price, they could only silently accept it. After all, the density of the origin energy here could increase their cultivation. After discussing for a while, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three decided to stay in the cultivation area to cultivate before the auction began. Fortunately, we took a huge sum of money from Chu Feihu back then. Otherwise, this price would really be unbearable. Shangguan Yingying sighed. The demonic tower was really a place that swallowed money. It could unknowingly squeeze the cultivators dry. Ziren nodded. In my opinion, the reason why there are cultivators leaving the demonic tower every day is not because they don't want to stay here anymore, but because they can't afford to stay here. After hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichen could not help but chuckle. This was not impossible. Thinking back, when they had just arrived at the demonic tower, wasn't it the same situation? They were only worried that they did not have enough spirit stones to continue staying here. With their current wealth, they were unable to reach the Whispering Sun realm. However, if they continued to stay here, the rate of consumption of spirit stones would be extremely terrifying. Moreover, the rooms that they had chosen to stay in now were not the best rooms in the cultivation area. Those rooms with denser origin power would cost up to 1,000 spirit stones or even tens of thousands of spirit stones a day. However, those kinds of places were more suitable for cultivators to use when they were breaking through. With their current situation, they only needed to cultivate in the ordinary rooms of the cultivation area. After all, they still had to participate in the auction. They couldn't waste their spirit stones here. In order to participate in the auction, Bailey Hongzhuang accepted a few more orders. She didn't know what kind of price the Tears of Glacial Flame would fetch at the auction, but this auction had attracted so many people, so there must be a lot of rich people. In such a grand auction, every single item could be sold for a sky-high price. If they didn't make any preparations, they wouldn't be willing to see the tears of cold flame slip away right in front of their eyes. Not only that, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichen were also determined to obtain the map fragment. No matter what kind of secret was behind the map fragment, since they had encountered it, they had to obtain it. Perhaps there really was a big secret behind it. Chapter 32:02. The time spent cultivating passed extremely quickly, and soon it was not far from the start of the auction. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three left the cultivation area and returned to their residence. At the same time, Sweet Dream appeared in front of them. Young Master D, the auction of the Golden Flame Auction House is about to begin. Steward Sheen asked me to inform you that you can leave in 2 days. Sweet Dreams slowly said. When she heard Manager Jean mention this matter to her, she was also very surprised. She did not expect Steward Sheen to know that Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 were very interested in the Tears of Cold Flame. We understand. Steward Sheen said that he will leave in 2 days, but if he meets you after arriving at Penglai Island, he will pretend not to know you. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded, all right. It seemed that Steward Sheen was not willing to expose their identities in front of the Golden Flame auction house. When the time came, he would hide as much as he could. Young Master D, I can understand why you're going to the auction, but why is Steward Sheen going with you? Sweet Dream could not help but ask the question in her heart. She had stayed in the Magic Tower for quite some time, and it was rare to see Steward Sheen leave the Magic Tower. However, during this period of time, Steward Sheen was preparing to leave for the second time. And from the looks of it, it seemed to be related to Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. Steward Sheen naturally has his reasons. Perhaps he is also interested in something at the auction. Di Beichun said indifferently. Hearing this, the doubts in Sweet Dream's heart did not disappear. But she also knew that Di Beichun and the other 3 did not plan to talk to her about this matter. So she immediately said, I hope you can successfully bid for the Tears of Cold Flame. I will wait for the good news of your return at the Magic Tower. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. Thank you. After Sweet Dream left, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 immediately began to pack their luggage. It was indeed time for them to set off. Steward Sheen was very familiar with Penglai Island, so it was not a big deal to go later. However, the 4 of them had never been to Penglai Island before, so it was good to go earlier to understand the situation. Steward Sheen hopes that we won't have any contact with the Golden Flame auction house. What are your plans? When Xiron put the things in the room into his Chinquan bag as he looked at Di Beichun and asked. Di Beichun glanced at Wen Ziran and said indifferently, since we are doing business, we naturally have to see which side has the highest price, which is most beneficial to us. As for the final decision, we will see when the time comes. After we go to Penglai Island, we can take the opportunity to learn more about the Golden Flame auction house. What we know now is only a rough idea. Who knows? Things might be more complicated than we think. Bailey Hongzhuang shrugged her shoulders. Even if Steward Sheen gave them an answer that was likely to be the truth, they still couldn't be sure. In my opinion, perhaps there is some conflict between the Golden Flame auction house and the Demon Refining Tower. That's why this happened. Anyway, we have to observe the situation first. It's fine as long as we don't suffer any losses, Shangguan Yingying said thoughtlessly. If you say that Steward Sheen and Steward Jean are profiteers, I think you guys are also quite shrewd. You flatter me. After packing up everything, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 beasts embarked on their journey to Penglai Island. Chapter 3203. When Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 set off for Penglai Island, they discovered that many other cultivators were also setting off for Penglai Island. Along the way, they saw many boats, big and small, luxurious and plain. There were all kinds of boats, and everyone's destination was the same, Penglai Island. At night, some of the luxurious boats were lit up, reflecting the surface of the sea, making it look extremely beautiful. It didn't look like they were hurrying, but rather like they were boating on the lake. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3's boat wasn't big, but it was still quite eye-catching among the many boats. This was because cultivators who had some understanding of materials would immediately notice that their boat was different from the rest. It looked like a small boat, but its cost was no less than those luxurious boats. Compared to when they first came to Penglai Island, because their cultivation wasn't high enough, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 were undoubtedly much more open. Even if their cultivation was only at the 5th level of the Purple Realm, there were at most cultivators at the 5th level of the Purple Realm on Penglai Island, so their strength wasn't strange at all. In the process of rushing the waterway, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 also saw a lot of lively scenes. Some of the 2 ships directly collided with each other and caused conflicts, and some of the cultivators on the ships were chatting directly. They had never encountered such a scene before. Of course, there were also many people who took advantage of the situation. Some of the bigger boats saw that the cultivators on the smaller boats were easy to bully, so they directly attacked and robbed the other party clean. Fortunately, although Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three's boat wasn't big, it was very expensive to build. No one knew where they came from, so no one came to find trouble with them. In this regard, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three maintained a low profile as they moved forward. They didn't have any conflicts with anyone, nor did they have any plans to make friends with anyone. This is really lively. Shangguan and Ying looked at the sparkling boat lights around them, and a comfortable smile spread across her delicate and beautiful face. Under the yellow lights, she looked unusually gentle. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. We have never encountered such a scene before. Speaking of which, it can be considered a major feature of Penglai Island. With so many people heading to Penglai Island, I feel that the inns in Penglai Island will be full again. Xiren raised his eyebrows. They had already met many people along the way. What more cultivators from other islands? Just by thinking about it, they knew that this number of people was definitely extremely terrifying. I don't know how big the Golden Flame auction house is. With so many cultivators going there together, how can there be enough space? Xiaohei frowned. Her face was full of confusion. In his opinion, even if the auction house was huge, it should not be able to accommodate so many people. At this time, Di Beichen seemed to have thought of something and could not help but ask, "Do you remember the invitation letters we got from Gao Hanxia and Gao Hanxiu?" As soon as he said that, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two immediately looked at Di Beichen. "You mean we need an invitation to attend this auction?" Chapter 3204. If that's really the case, then it's fortunate that we still have an invitation. Otherwise, wouldn't we not even be able to enter the auction? When Xiren was secretly speechless, he had completely forgotten about this problem previously. If they had not coincidentally obtained 2 invitations, then wouldn't they only be able to stare outside the auction house during this trip to Penglai Island? But Steward Qin has never told us that we need an invitation to participate in the auction. Shangguan and Ying couldn't help but frown. In the next second, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three looked at each other and understood the gist of it. It seems that Steward Qin really doesn't want us to go to Penglai Island to participate in the auction at all. When Xiren chuckled, he did not believe that Steward Qin would forget about this kind of thing. He was just pretending that he had forgotten about it. Di Beichen's eyes were calm and deep. If it were us and Steward Qin, we would definitely not want us to participate in this auction. As long as it was a person, they would have their own selfish motives. Since Manager Jean had gone overboard this time, Steward Qin was naturally unwilling to let Manager Jean have the slightest chance of success. However, Steward Qin had deliberately not told them that they needed an invitation. At the very least, he did not stop them. This was already very good. When we get to Penglai Island, we'll see if that's really the case. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled into a faint smile. Speaking of which, if we really need an invitation to participate, then wouldn't there be many cultivators who don't have one? Shangguan Ying was also puzzled. That's right, I can't figure it out either. Forget it, when we arrive, we will naturally understand the situation. Even during the journey, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three did not stop cultivating. Each of them took turns to control the ship, while the others cultivated in peace. To them, time was the most precious. Even if it was just a little bit of time, it would still be extremely good to be able to increase their strength by a bit. Finally, for days had passed, and Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three had successfully arrived at Penglai Island. When they arrived at the dock, they discovered that the dock of Penglai Island was several times larger than the dock of Emerald Island. And now, all the docks were filled with cultivators, and cultivators from various islands had rushed here in the past few days. Sure enough, it is worthy of being called the largest island in the entire Penglai Island. It can be seen from the size of the pier. Bailey Hongzhuang looked around and sighed. Di Beichen nodded his head slightly. Penglai Palace is located on Penglai Island. It is definitely not something a small island like Emerald Island can compare to. Speaking of which, the Golden Flame Auction House is holding such a big auction. I wonder if gang leader Yi and the others will also come? Shangguan and Ying suddenly thought of something. Bailey Hongzhuang spread her hands. Maybe if we can meet, then it's really fate. After arriving at the dock, Xiren put away the ship, and the four of them walked onto Penglai Island together. Not long after they left, buildings appeared in the line of sight of Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three. With just a slight glance, everyone could feel the magnificence and atmosphere of Penglai Island. Chapter 32:05. Walking on the street, the bustling noises of the surroundings constantly rang in the ears of Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three. Xiao He and Xiao Bai had turned into pearl hair clips and were perched on Bailey Hongzhuang's head. However, their little eyes were still looking around, full of curiosity towards Penglai Island. Only Baisher, who was walking beside Bailey Hongzhuang, attracted the attention of many people. Baisher was now the strongest member of Bailey Hongzhuang's team. As its cultivation level increased, it had grown into an awe-inspiring presence. Its huge body was like a lion's, and its soft white fur had turned red and white. It was not messy at all, but it exuded an aristocratic aura. Its eyes were unusually sharp. Wherever its gaze passed, everyone could feel its hostility. Compared to its adorable appearance when it was held in Bailey Hongzhuang's arms, Baisher was now an awe-inspiring presence that was enough to intimidate an area. As a beast king, as it gradually grew older, its advantages had completely exploded. Its heaven-defying cultivation speed made when Xiren and the others sigh in amazement. There were many cultivators on the streets who had their own contracted beasts. However, these contracted beasts could only lower their heads when Baisher glanced at them, showing signs of submission. Some of the weaker contracted beasts did not even have the courage to stand up and walk when facing Baisher. Their entire bodies lay on the ground, trembling. It was obvious that they were afraid of the Beast King's awe-inspiring presence. This scene naturally attracted the attention of many cultivators. In an instant, many people's gazes fell on Baisher. What kind of contracted beast is this? It looks very domineering. Whether it's its fur, its body, or its aura, it's not something an ordinary contracted beast can possess. Look at the contracted beasts on the streets. They can't help but submit when they see it. It's obvious that this contracted beast is extraordinarily powerful. Such a contracted beast is simply my dream. Just by having it by my side, it's extraordinarily domineering. I don't know how these guys got their hands on it. Everyone looked at Bailey Hongzhuang's contracted beast with envy. A contracted beast was the best helper for a cultivator. It would never betray its master. It could be said that it was the most reassuring existence. If they could snatch it by force, these people would definitely snatch Baisher back without hesitation. Unfortunately, the contracted beast had already contracted with its master. Even if they snatched it back, it would be of no use. They would only suffer the counterattack of the contracted beast. Hence, everyone could only look on enviously. Baisher naturally noticed that everyone's gazes were filled with envy and amazement. It immediately raised its head and walked proudly. It was a beast king. These guys could not be envied. Hongzhuang. Baisher is becoming more and more awe-inspiring. The surrounding contracted beasts have been scared out of their wits by Baisher. Shangguan Yingying could not help but exclaim. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang's lips couldn't help but curve up a little. Speaking of which, she didn't have any good memories in Fengbo country. The only thing that made her feel fortunate was that she got Baisher there. Chapter 32:06. The White Lion is indeed becoming more and more powerful. Compared to it, I, as its master, am rather inferior. Bailey Hongzhuang sighed faintly. Although she felt that her master was rather inferior, the pride on her face was still very strong. Anyone who was able to obtain a contract beast like the White Lion would be extremely proud. As a beast king, the White Lion is naturally gifted in cultivation. Logically speaking, a beast king cannot be contracted by a cultivator. Hongzhuang, it's already a miracle that you were able to contract the White Lion. When Xiren gave Bailey Hongzhuang a thumbs up, they had actually wanted to find a suitable contract beast as well. Unfortunately, most contract beasts could not keep up with the increase in their cultivation. It was too difficult to form a contract with a strong enough beast, and the growth rate of a contract beast was average, so it was better not to have one. Perhaps it might be useful in the beginning, but at their level of cultivation, it was useless to bring it out. It was because of this that the three of them had never had a contract beast. With their status and background, it was not difficult for them to obtain a contract beast. However, if they could not find a suitable contract beast, even if they managed to contract one, it would be meaningless. It would just be a waste of a slot. As their cultivation had reached this level, the chances of them finding a suitable contract beast had become increasingly slim. They might as well not look for a contract beast at all. Of course, that was unless they found a suitable contract beast. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang's smile grew even more radiant. That's right, I never thought that I would encounter such a strange situation. Thinking back to what had happened in the past, she really felt that she had been King lucky to have encountered such a good thing. It was truly miraculous. The White Lion listened to the conversation between Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. In fact, it was also very glad that it had met such a good master. In fact, this was not its master's luck, but its own luck. It was not only the White Lion. Xiao He and Xiao Bai also felt that their luck was very good. Thinking back to when they had first transmigrated with Bailey Hongzhuang, they had felt very helpless. However, they felt that their luck was really good now. Ever since they had acknowledged Bailey Hongzhuang as their master, they had never regretted it. This Penglai Island is really lively. Thinking back to when we first arrived at Emerald Island, we thought that it was very lively. However, compared to Penglai Island, the difference is huge. Shangguan Yingying chuckled. They had stayed in the Demon Training Tower for half a year. Every day, they were either cultivating in seclusion, facing the vast sea and endless monster hordes of the ocean world, or participating in the arena competition. The main rhythm of their lives was cultivation and battle. Now that they had come to this market, they felt refreshed, and their mood couldn't help but become extremely good. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. When we were on the ship, I could see that Penglai Island scale was much larger than Emerald Island. We should only be at the periphery of Penglai Island now. I heard that Penglai Palace is located behind Penglai Island. However, cultivators who are not from Penglai Palace can't enter. Chapter 3207. Since we have already come to Penglai Island, we will definitely see the cultivators of Penglai Palace. I think it will be able to satisfy our curiosity. When Ziren said with a faint smile, the most important thing for us now is to find an inn to settle down in. The number of cultivators who have come to Penglai Island these days is extremely large. We should take advantage of the fact that the inn is not full to settle down, and we can also learn more information. Bei Chun slowly said. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. Penglai Island is so big, there are many inns here. Let's just find an inn and settle down first. Hongzhuang, after we settle down, let's go shopping. We have been in the MO refining tower for so long, and the things inside are so expensive. I have not bought new clothes for a long time. Shangguan Yingying's eyes flashed with anticipation. As a woman, she had always valued her image very much. It was just that she did not have such thoughts in a place like the MO refining tower. Now that she finally came out, she could not help but want to buy some things she needed. Okay, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and agreed. There are still some necessities, we should indeed buy them. Then when you two go shopping, help me indeed Beichin buy some things. When Ziren came to Shangguan Yingying's side and chuckled. Okay, Shangguan Yingying raised her eyebrows. Then I will reluctantly promise you. Thank you, wife. Ziren cupped his hands, causing Shangguan Yingying to laugh. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three found a very lively big and near the center of Penglai Island. They didn't know much about the situation of Penglai Island, so it was often easier to get information if they stayed in such a big inn. After staying, Bei Chun and Wen Ziren returned to the house to rest. Bailey Hongzhuang and Shangguan Yingying went shopping together. No matter when, shopping was always a woman's nature. It must be said that the things on Penglai Island were all extremely outstanding. However, the prices were also extremely high. Regarding this, Bailey Hongzhuang and Shangguan Yingying, who were already used to staying in the magic refining tower, didn't feel that this price was too expensive at all. On the contrary, they felt that it was very cheap because the magic refining tower's fees were truly terrifying. Perhaps it was because the Golden Flame auction house's large-scale auction had attracted a lot of cultivators. The sellers on both sides of the street were also buying a lot of goods, dazzling the eyes. The two of them helped Di Beichun and Wen Xiren purchase a few sets of clothes before returning to the inn. They had made a bountiful harvest. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang and Shangwan Yingying coming back, Di Beichun and Wen Xiren also smiled. Hongzhuang, we just found out that participating in the Golden Flame auction house's auction requires an invitation letter. Those without an invitation letter are not allowed to enter. Di Beichun looked at the things Bailey Hongzhuang bought and told Bailey Hongzhuang the news he just received. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows, seemingly surprised but not surprised. Then why did so many cultivators come to Penglai Island together? They can't participate. Chapter 3208. That's not all. We're here for the large-scale auction held by the Golden Flame auction house. In fact, in order to create a craze for this auction, the Golden Flame auction house also holds small-scale auctions every day. Such a grand event naturally attracted many cultivators to come and watch, when Xiren added. Bailey Hongzhuang finally understood. No wonder so many cultivators are here. The Golden Flame auction house is really good. Most of the cultivators who participated in large-scale auctions were wealthy people. Otherwise, it would be useless for them to enter an auction of this level because they simply did not have the strength to bid for the auction items. On the contrary, these small-scale auctions were probably more in line with the requirements of ordinary cultivators. The items that appeared in these auctions would not be bad. After all, this was the headquarters of the Golden Flame auction house. Ordinary cultivators would also have the ability to compete. This was undoubtedly the best outcome. We've learned that the Golden Flame auction house's position on Penglai Island is deeply rooted. Everyone has long forgotten when it came into existence. It seems to have appeared earlier than Penglai Palace, 100 Flowers Gate, and Crimson Moon Sect. Its foundation is extremely strong. Everyone's comments about the Golden Flame auction house are mostly good. As long as the items are auctioned at the Golden Flame auction house, there's a certain guarantee. If there's a fake or other problem, the Golden Flame auction house can resolve it. As for Steward Jin's character, everyone only says that he's a peacemaker. No matter what, he always has a smile on his face. Almost no one has ever seen him angry. However, everyone acknowledges that he's a profiteer. After all, as the steward of an auction house, if he's not a profiteer, I'm afraid he wouldn't be able to develop the Golden Flame auction house to such a scale, Di Beichun said slowly. After listening to all this, Bailey Hongzhuang's heart was a little more clear. According to this, Steward Jin is not someone we can't contact. We just need to pay more attention to our own interests during negotiations. Di Beichun nodded. That's right. We'll have to wait until after the auction to understand the specific situation. It's getting late. Let's go have lunch and try out the dishes of Penglai Island. A glint of light flashed across Xiren's eyes. Back when he was in the demonic tower, he had been suppressing his cultivation. Now that he was in Penglai Island, he could finally relax. Okay. Shangwan Ying nodded repeatedly. Apparently, she was also very interested in the food. There are private rooms on the second floor of this inn. Let's eat in the private rooms. That way, it will be more convenient for Xiao He and the others to eat with us. Di Beichun's gaze landed on the three beasties. These three fellows had always been extremely interested in food. If they were to dine in the inn's main hall, Baisher's figure alone would probably attract everyone's attention, let alone Xiao He and Xiao Bai. Upon hearing Di Beichun's words, the three beasties immediately looked at Di Beichun gratefully. They had been eating dry rations for 4 days on the way here. They really want to try the hot dishes. In that case, let's set off. Xiren stood up with a smile and shouted for everyone to go down to the second floor. Chapter 3209. As the four of them chatted, they looked at the scene in the lobby through the curtain of the private room. As the auction was approaching, there would be new cultivators coming to stay in the hotel almost every once in a while. It could be said that it was extremely lively. The buildings in Penglai Island are much taller than the buildings in Emerald Island. Just this hotel alone is much more impressive. Zyron said slowly as he put a mouthful of food into his mouth. Bachin retracted his gaze from downstairs. There are usually a lot of cultivators on Punlai Island. In addition, many cultivators would come here because of its reputation. Even if the place is extremely spacious, it might not be enough to accommodate them. So naturally, the floors would be higher and higher. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. She felt that Punlai Island was really a bustling place. It was much livelier than other small islands. While Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three were chatting, the three beasties were struggling to eat their food. As demonic beasts, their appetite was much bigger than Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. However, at this moment, Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze suddenly focused on a figure downstairs. "Look, we met an acquaintance." Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Beichun and the others looked downstairs. With a glance, everyone's expression became interesting. This person was none other than Gao Hanshun, who had a deep hatred for them. Beside him was Lu Jiangang and Gue Jun. Bailey Hongzhuang, and the other three were no strangers to them. "We actually met Gao Hanshun and the others again. This is really not an ordinary fate." Shangguan Yingying's eyes revealed a hint of surprise. Enemies are bound to meet on a narrow road. They originally thought that they would meet Yi Li Fei. Unexpectedly, they did not meet Yi Li Fei and instead met Gao Hanshun and the others. This made them feel very helpless. Ever since we arrived at Demonic Refining Island, we haven't paid any attention to Gao Hanshun and the others. "I wonder how the Heaven Shaking Association is doing now," Beichun muttered. Bailey Hongzhuang's phoenix eyes flashed with a thoughtful light. Back then, the Heaven-Shaking faction's reputation had been greatly reduced due to the use of the pill to control people's minds. Yi Li Fei and the others had directly driven them back to their headquarters from the Emerald Island. Logically speaking, this news should have already reached their headquarters. In my opinion, it is impossible for them to expand any further. At most, they will stay in their original headquarters. It's best if they can't even keep their original territories. That's what I want to see. Shangguan Yingying's voice was slightly cold. After coming to Punlai Island for so long, the person she hated the most was Gao Hanshun. Her life of hiding was still vivid in her mind, and it was all thanks to Gao Hanshun. Gao Hanshun and the others obviously did not notice that several pairs of eyes were staring at them from the second-floor box. At this moment, they were only thinking about their own matters. Ever since they were framed by Yi Li Fei and the others on Emerald Island, they could not wash away this stain. No matter how they tried to explain, this stain would always be on their heads, and they could not remove it. Chapter 32:10. Most importantly, it was easy for them to recruit gang members. Many cultivators joined because of the reputation of their gang, but they had to go through their selection before they could join. However, ever since the news spread, they fell into an awkward situation. No cultivator was willing to join their heaven-shaking faction. Even if they lowered the threshold for recruitment, no one was interested. When their own faction members went to recruit cultivators, the other party ran away faster than a rabbit. They were afraid that they would be forced to eat pills, which made them so angry that they almost bled. Because no new faction members were willing to join, the heaven-shaking faction's power could not expand. Many faction members gradually lost confidence in the heaven-shaking faction. After all, they had always been looked at strangely by others when they stayed in the heaven-shaking faction. In addition, the heaven-shaking faction no longer had the potential to develop. Many cultivators were no longer willing to stay here. Gradually, more and more faction members left, and the heaven-shaking faction's power was not as strong as before. They had tried everything they could to keep the gang members, but as their own forces shrank, their profits were no longer as good as before. Even if they used more benefits to keep the gang members, they wouldn't be able to keep them for long. The end result was that they couldn't make ends meet. After struggling for a while, Gao Hanshun and the others helplessly realized the fact that they could not stop the faction members from leaving. The gradual decline of the heaven-shaking faction had become an established fact. This was obviously something they could not accept. It was not easy for them to develop the heaven-shaking faction to this level with their own hands. They did not expect that the entire heaven-shaking faction would collapse so quickly because of a rumor. They spent several years developing the heaven-shaking faction, but in just half a year, the heaven-shaking faction had become a small faction. If they continued to develop like this, they knew in their hearts that the heaven-shaking faction was not far from disbanding. They had never hated anyone so much. If possible, they really wanted to kill that despicable guy, Yi Li Fei. However, with their current strength, there was no way they could fight Yi Li Fei head-on. They would only be courting death. Moreover, they had already been noticed by other cultivators before they even stepped onto the Emerald Island and were directly expelled. Basically, their reputation on the Emerald Island was completely ruined. No matter which faction saw them, they would not hesitate to attack them. There was nothing they could do. Under such circumstances, no matter how unwilling they were, they could only choose to compromise. This time, they originally wanted to go to the Scarlet Moon Island. The heaven-shaking faction was about to disappear. If the three of them did not find a way out, it would be really troublesome in the future. After all, on Penglai Island, spirit stones were the most important thing for cultivators. Now that the heaven-shaking faction was disbanded, they had no source of income. Most of the money they had was spent when they tried to keep the faction members. If they could not find a way out, it would be a problem for them to survive on Penglai Island in the future. Chapter 32:11. When they had just started to develop, the Crimson Moon sect had hoped that they could join them. They had even tried to recruit them. However, they had only wanted to make a name for themselves on Penglai Island. Hence, they had rejected the Crimson Moon sect's recruitment. Although they were no different from drowning dogs now, at least they still had their strength. They could only hope that the Crimson Moon sect would still be willing to accept them. When they found out that the cultivator who had recruited them had come to Penglai Island to participate in the Golden Flame Auction House's auction, they immediately came to Penglai Island to contact him. Big Brother, do you think Big Brother Xiaonan will agree to recruit us into the Crimson Moon sect? Lu Jiangang looked at Gao Hanshun worriedly. He had never been so down and out ever since the Jintian Association was established. This feeling was really uncomfortable. If Xiaonan was not willing to recruit them, then their future would be terrible. Gao Hanshun's expression was also a little depressed. He was the most depressed out of everyone who had come this far. His two younger brothers had been killed for no reason, and he had not found the murderer until now. That was fine. However, the Jintian Association had also been destroyed. He could not take revenge on Yi Li Fei, even if he wanted to. He was extremely sullen. With our cultivation base, it shouldn't be a problem for us to join the Crimson Moon sect, Gao Hanshun said after some thought. Guo Jun's expression was also a little ugly. Compared to their previous high spirits, they no longer had the slightest bit of vigor. On the surface, they were just pretending. They did not want to be mocked by their former opponents. Back then, Xiaonan tried to persuade us to join the Crimson Moon sect, but we rejected him. Now that we're down and out, if we look for him again, I'm afraid we'll be mocked. Hearing this, Gao Hanshun said in a low voice, even if we're mocked, there's nothing we can do. We can only swallow it. Once we've achieved something in the Crimson Moon sect, these mocking voices will gradually disappear. Lu Jiangang nodded. We've completely failed in the previous incident. However, as long as we start all over again, the three of U.S. brothers will be able to create a new world in the Crimson Moon sect in the future. Thinking of this, the three of them looked better. They had spent the past half a year in anger. Now that they had abandoned the Jintian Association, they felt much more relaxed. Just as Gao Hanshun and the other two were deep in thought, a familiar voice rang out behind them. Brother Gao, you're here. A burly man appeared behind Gao Hanshun and the other two. I came here as soon as I heard that you were looking for me. I didn't expect that we would have the chance to meet again. Gao Hanshun and the other two hurriedly turned around. When they saw the warm smile on Xiaonan's face, the heaviness in their hearts dissipated slightly. Big Brother Xiao, we're here to look for you, Guo Jun said with a smile. Ha! Xiaonan nodded. No matter what it is, let's sit down and talk. It's not convenient to stand here with so many people coming and going. Yes. Lu Jiangang nodded quickly. Let's order some food and drink first, then sit down and talk. Chapter 32:12. Since this place is full, why don't we go somewhere else to talk? Xiaonan said slowly. Although he was asking, the dissatisfaction on his face was very obvious. With his current status, he was already giving Gao Hanshun and the other two a lot of face by being willing to meet them. If they were to ask him to go somewhere else, he would not be willing to do so. Gao Hanshun and the other two were clearly not stupid. Just by looking at Xiaonan's expression, they understood what he meant. They immediately said, "No need, no need. This place is full. Won't you be dissatisfied if two of us leave?" Gao Hanshun immediately gave Lu Jiangang and Gue Jun a look. Lu Jiangang and Gue Jun immediately understood. They scanned the crowd in the hall and realized that most of them were sitting in a group. It was undoubtedly very inconvenient for them to attack. In the end, they found a cultivator drinking alone in a corner. Their eyes immediately lit up. This person was their target. In the next second, the two of them walked up to the cultivator and said, "You should be done drinking, right? We want this seat. If you know what's good for you, leave quickly." This scene was clearly seen by Bailey Hongzhuang and the others on the second floor. A trace of disdain appeared in their hearts. The way Gao Hanshun and the others do things really hasn't changed at all. They're always so unreasonable. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows slightly, and the corner of her lips curled into a mocking smile. Thinking back to when Gao Hanshun was bent on finding trouble with them, he was also like this. He did not care about the feelings of others at all. It could be said that he was extremely arrogant. I'm afraid that this kind of behavior has already become ingrained in their bones. They won't be able to change it in a short period of time unless they meet someone who can make them suffer. Di Beichun said coldly. The four of them sighed faintly in their hearts. They only hoped that Gao Hanshun and the other two would meet a cultivator who could make them suffer as soon as possible. This way, they would be able to get rid of this bad habit of theirs. However, if it really came to that, the three of them would probably have to go to hell to repent. Speaking of which, the cultivator who came later seems to be wearing Crimson Moon sex clothes. When Xiren's sharp eyes noticed the symbol on Xiaonan's clothes and could not help but comment. The three major powers of Penglai Island all had their own unique symbols. When their disciples walked outside, their identities could often be distinguished just by looking at their clothes. Of course, there were quite a number of people who would usually fake their names. However, Penglai Island was now filled with cultivators from all over the place. There were also many cultivators from the three major forces. There shouldn't be anyone who would dare to fake their names here. After being reminded by Xiren, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two immediately noticed this point. Their gazes couldn't help but change a little. I didn't expect them to have some connections with the Crimson Moon sect. From the looks of it, they must have a favor to ask of someone. What happened just now was clearly a deliberate attempt to curry favor with the cultivators of the Crimson Moon sect. I wonder what the reason is. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were filled with wisdom. Unfortunately, there were too many people in the restaurant, and it was too noisy, so they couldn't hear what Gao Hanshun and the others were talking about. Chapter 32:13. Lu Jiangang and Gue Jun stood in front of the cultivator who was drinking alone. Both of their attitudes were extremely fierce. This scene was noticed by many cultivators in the restaurant, but no one paid any attention to it. This kind of thing was to see who was stronger among the cultivators. The weak had no choice but to leave. However, when the cultivator who was drinking alone raised his head, Lu Jiangang and Gue Jun could not help but stop in their tracks with just a glance. A chill quickly rose from the soles of their feet to their backs. It was as if they had been glanced at by the Grim Reaper. Their limbs turned cold and they stood rooted to the ground, unable to move. They only felt that their souls were about to leave their bodies. They had never seen such a terrifying gaze before. It was as if one glance was enough to take their lives. Even though they had been on Penglai Island for many years, they had never seen such a terrifying existence. It was so terrifying that they did not even have the heart to resist. At this moment, the two of them were extremely regretful. They originally thought that the other party was easy to bully. They did not expect the other party to be such a terrifying existence. If he wanted to take their lives, it would be a matter of minutes. Cold sweat kept dripping from their foreheads. They were dumbstruck and did not dare to say a word. They did not even have the courage to take a step forward and leave. After glancing at them, The man retracted his gaze. Looking at the empty pot, he seemed to sigh faintly. Then, he stood up and left the table. The crowd did not feel the gaze that Lu Jiangang and Gui Jun felt. They only thought that this man was really a coward. The other party had only left a sentence, and he had already left dejectedly. However, Lu Jiangang and Gui Jun were already sitting weakly on the chairs. The back of their clothes was already soaked. They only felt that they had just walked through the gates of hell. They were so close to being in hell now. After seeing that Lu Jiangang and Gui Jun had successfully driven the cultivator away, Gao Hanshun revealed a satisfied smile on his face. He immediately said to Xiao Nan, "Brother Xiao, please come in." Hearing that, Xiao Nan smiled faintly. "Okay." Bailey Hongzhuang, Shangguan Yingying, and Wen Ziren retracted their gazes after seeing this scene. Although they were very disdainful of Gao Hanshun and the other two, they had to admit that the strength of these three people was indeed not to be underestimated. It was expected that the lone cultivator would be driven away by them. After all, it was extremely difficult to fight against four people with the strength of one person, unless the person was an expert among experts. However, Di Beichen's gaze was still fixed on that cultivator. He had a vague feeling that this cultivator was very special, giving him an inexplicable and strange feeling. But he definitely did not dislike. On the contrary, there was a sense of familiarity, but when Di Beichen discovered this, he felt it was very strange. It was just a stranger. How could he have such a strange feeling? There was no time to think about anything else. Di Beichen stretched out his hand and directly asked the waiter to invite the cultivator over. He did not know why he did that, but he had a feeling that it would be wrong if he let the other party leave just like that. Chapter 32:14. The three of them couldn't help but look at each other. What was going on? Based on Di Beichen's personality, he wouldn't sympathize with them after seeing them being chased out by Gao Hanshun and the other two. Would he? This wasn't his usual style at all. "Beichen, what are you trying to do?" Wen Ziren couldn't help but ask. This was too abnormal. However, Di Beichen looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two with a complicated expression and gave them an unexpected answer. "I don't know either. Don't know." This answer made Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two feel a little helpless. Even the three beasties who were gorging themselves couldn't help but raise their heads and look at Di Beichen in astonishment. They had known Di Beichen for so long, but this was the first time they saw Di Beichen do something so strange. It was completely illogical. Noticing everyone's gaze, Di Beichen knew that his answer wasn't convincing at all. He didn't say anything else. Before he could figure out what kind of feeling this was, no matter how he answered, it wouldn't be convincing at all. Di Yujue was in a very bad mood today. He was scolded by his old man again. At his age, he was probably the only person who would be scolded so badly by his old man. Thinking about how he was usually so impressive outside, he felt that his life was a complete failure when faced with his old man, old lady, and wife who resented him when he returned home. However, not only were his old man, old lady, and wife unwilling to forgive him, even he couldn't forgive himself. He took this opportunity to take a breather and drink some wine to lessen the pain in his heart. However, the more he drank, the clearer his mind became, and the more he hated himself. However, just as he was about to leave, a waiter appeared in front of him. "Sir, there's a gentleman in the private room on the second floor who would like to invite you for a small gathering." Hearing this, Di Yujue rejected without any interest. Not interested. However, he still subconsciously raised his head to look at the second floor. At this moment, Di Beichen also happened to lift the curtain and look at Di Yujue. The moment their gazes met, their expressions changed a little. The waiter was about to leave after receiving Di Yujue's answer, but Di Yujue changed his mind the moment he saw Di Beichen. He said, "Wait." The waiter hurriedly looked at Di Yujue and heard him say, "I'll go." When Di Yujue arrived at the private room, Xiao He, Xiao Bai, and Bai Shi had already returned to the Chaos Ring. After all, it would be very strange if he saw the three gluttonous contract bees here the moment he appeared. Although Bailey Hongzhuang and the others didn't know why Di Beichen did this, they believed that Di Beichen must have his reasons for doing this. They would naturally understand later. After seeing Di Yujue arrive, Di Beichun couldn't help but smile. Sir, please take a seat. Di Yujue sat down opposite Di Beichun. He looked at Di Beichun in front of him and had a very strange feeling in his heart, as if he had seen him somewhere before. However, he also knew very well that he didn't know anyone on Punlai Island and naturally didn't know anyone. Chapter 32:15. However, this disguise technique was pretty good. Di Yujue secretly praised in his heart. If it wasn't for the fact that his cultivation was much higher than the four little guys in front of him, he probably wouldn't have been able to see through their disguise. This kind of disguise was enough to deceive people on Punlai Island. Little brother, why did you invite me up here for a small gathering? Di Yujue opened the door and asked. Hearing this, Di Beichun smiled faintly. I don't have any other intentions. I just feel like we hit it off very well and want to make friends. Until this moment, Di Beichun also didn't understand where this strange feeling in his heart came from. Moreover, he didn't have any other intentions in inviting the other party. He just wanted to get to know him. If other people told Di Yujue this reason, Di Yujue definitely wouldn't believe it. However, when Di Beichun said this reason, Di Yujue chose to believe it, because he and Di Beichun had the same feeling. Perhaps the other party invited him because of this feeling. This was really strange. What a coincidence. I also feel like we hit it off very well when I saw you, little brother. It seems like we didn't know each other before. Di Yujue smiled. Di Beichun nodded. I just came to Punlai Island not long ago. As for Punlai Island, it's my first time here. I don't think we've met before. I see. Di Yujue was even more certain of his own thoughts. Since it's so rare to meet a friend, we don't need to ask about the past. How about a drink? Di Yujue, who was originally in an extremely bad mood, didn't know why, but after seeing Di Beichun, his mood improved a lot. Perhaps this was an inexplicable fate. Could it be that he also wanted to make a friend despite the difference in age? This little guy in front of him was only in his 20s. He was much older than this little guy. Even he felt that this kind of strange fate was very interesting. Okay. Di Beichun picked up his glass and drank with Di Yujue without hesitation. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others stared blankly at the scene before them. The strange feeling in their hearts grew stronger and stronger. It was one thing for Di Beichun to do this for no reason, but why did the other party also have the same feeling as Di Beichun? Could it be that there was such a thing as becoming bosom friends at first sight in this world? Di Beichun and Di Yujue didn't talk about themselves or each other at all. They just chatted happily about the situation in front of them, as if they hadn't known each other for decades. However, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two knew very well that they had never seen him before. What was going on? The three of them quietly exchanged glances with each other, after which they shook their heads. They really could not understand the reason behind this. Perhaps this was really a very strange kind of fate. The most important thing was that they were clearly sitting in the same box now, but Di Beichun and Di Yujue obviously only had eyes for each other and completely ignored the other three. It was really strange. It's really too little to drink with bosom friends. My mood today was extremely bad. After meeting you, little brother, it's a lot better. Haha, this toast is for you.